7:06 p.m. This open meeting of the Grafton Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted both remotely and in person, consistent with the temporary provisions of the open meeting law, which extends remote meeting protocols through March 31st, 2027. This meeting is convening via Zoom video conference and in person as posted on the meeting agenda, which can be found on the Town of Grafton website. Please see the meeting agenda for details on how to participate remotely. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. All participation within this meeting will be visible to others. Accordingly, please be aware that other people may be able to see you and that you should take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording of this meeting, and the recording may be published or rebroadcast at a later date. This meeting may feature public comment. For anyone attending virtually, if you'd like to request acknowledgement to speak, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. And the meeting administrator will enable you to speak when it's your turn. For anyone on the phone exclusively, the meeting administrator will enable you to speak. For those in person, we ask you to step up to the podium to speak. And all speakers, please state your name and address prior to your comments or questions. And each vote taken during this meeting will be done by a roll call vote. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. McCusker.
Okay, I invite the applicant to come forward, and I assume you'll want to update us on what's new.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Jason Panos, for the record, practicing law at 246 Andover Street, Peabody, Massachusetts. I've come in at the tail end primarily to assist the development team in wrapping this up, consolidating information, making sure that the latest round of information provided to the board on March 26th compiled all of the plans reflecting all of the changes through your hearing process. If you don't like to read plans, we put together a little project summary that has all of the project statistics, parking, building heights, that type of thing. And we completed, with that transmittal, our table of waiver requests from various town bylaws. As we went through this process, we really did a deep dive not only into the bylaws, but all of your rules and regulations. We scrubbed the plans, made sure that the information provided to the board was not only compiled in one place so that you wouldn't have to refer to plans from last year to pull into your decision. You'd have it all here in a final set, but also to make sure that whatever we were asking for by way of waiver requests gelled with those plans. So, for example, we noted a minor discrepancy in Building 1, in the height of Building 1. It wasn't measured according to the definition prescribed in the town bylaw. That actually worked out to the benefit of everybody. We shaved almost 10 feet off of that building height, which is the tallest building. Why is that important? That led to a waiver request. In your bylaw, for example, on a multi-building development like this, you measure distance between building according to your tallest building. So that was important. So instead of a 65-foot variance, we're now at around 56 feet, something like that. And there are other changes by way of more information, clarification of information. We've added parking. We're closer to overall development parking ratio per the bylaw than we were when we started this process. So there were a lot of clarifications, more information, and that was really the point of that exercise. And we appreciate the indulgence of the board in allowing us the extra time to kind of get through that. It was critically important that the information provided to you was not only consolidated but accurate. So with that, what I propose through the chair is that we do a brief technical presentation, more along the lines of perhaps refreshing the board as to where we started and where we are today, where some of those changes ended up, and kind of giving context to what was provided to you on March 26th. So with that, by the way, for the record, I'm joined by John Grenier from Grenier Associates, also a project principal. I'm also joined by Jim Venkasa, who is also a project principal for the apartments of Snow Road, and Owen Babcock, also a principal. And I think online, Steve is watching. So with that, and through the chair, if I may, I'd like to turn it over to John.
So yeah, I can just give you a bird's eye view of where we are on the overall project and statistically where we are in terms of parking, in terms of units per acre, et cetera. So this is, as Jason said, we as this process went on, it was iterative. As we were going through, we were making multiple changes to layouts, building configurations, building locations, and along the process, we were more concentrating on making sure we have
she gave it to me.
making sure we have a layout that.
Hang on a second.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You don't have a copy?
I don't have a copy of the plans.
I'll give you the originals I have.
Thank you. Sorry.
No
problem.
Okay.
So,
That-
I'm sorry.
That's Dan's,
That's what
decision,
you just gave us.
not the waivers.
No. Do you need the waivers too?
No, I have that.
You have that? Okay.
All right,
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem. So as we went through the process with the board, there were multiple iterations of building locations, configurations, whether it was the townhouses, the number of apartment buildings, et cetera. So as we were going through the process, we weren't necessarily updating every drain manhole, sizing every drain line, as the process, as again, it was iterative. So what we have before you now, as Jason stated, is a complete set that is not only a completed layout set, but this also incorporates all of the parking tallied up for the entire project. We have full engineered grading, drainage, utility plans, stormwater plans, all of the calculations that back up all that, as well as all of the architectural elevations, floor plans, particularly for all of the buildings, including the rear building, which we have labeled as Building 1, which has subsurface parking. And then with that, with the calculation in the zoning, as Jason stated, the way it's calculated in the zoning, you have to look at what the elevations are around the perimeter of the building, which where that Building 1 has a subsurface garage, well, the grade drops. So that altered what the technical elevation of that building is, which then transferred into, what the separation, what the required separation between buildings is. So this was a process of kind of compiling everything, making sure all of our plans were consistent. Any of the waivers that we were requesting are accurate. And so with that, what we, just to kind of give a recap on the entire project, what we are proposing and this is what we talked about at one of our last meetings, is we reduced the number of 24 unit buildings in the quad area in the center. Originally, we had 4, or for a number of iterations, we had 4 24 unit buildings. Now we have 3. We have 2 4-story buildings in the back. Building 1, which is the one closest to the northeast, that has subsurface parking. The benefit of those buildings, as we stated, is we have elevators in those buildings. We have covered parking in those, so that would give itself to providing people, whether they elderly or they have issues with mobility, that we have elevators and we have covered parking, so it's a good amenity. That also enabled us to provide more green space in the center quad area. If you notice, we have a rather good-sized clubhouse with amenity areas. We have a pool located in the center of the quad. We have a dog park, we have a playground, and then even beyond that, we have good, just grassed open space. And we have good pedestrian walkways throughout the site that will be lit. So and then we obviously have some townhouses along the frontage. So we have 8 townhouse units. Those are set back so that we have adequate areas for landscaping and walkways in the front, so it's a good presentation to the project. It provides good green space, and that also is more in keeping with the flavor of the neighborhood, the residential flavor of the neighborhood. We have our center access point, which is, I believe we have 18 feet wide. Yeah, so that's driving aisles of 18 feet wide with a center island, so we have a nice wide entranceway for access, and a good island area, which is good for landscaping and just a good presentation for the overall project. During the process, as you know, this was reviewed by the fire department for the ability to have access through the site for emergency vehicles. As part of that too, we do have access around the rear buildings as well, so that we have good access for emergency vehicles throughout the site. So what we believe we have before you now is a well thought out plan, and I think it was a good, I'll call it a good collaboration with the board. I think this is a first-class project. I think this is something that, again, we started off with 300 units originally before we went to the selectmen. Then we were at 268 units, then we were at 236 or 234 units. Right now, the total unit count is 192 units of apartment style, and then the 8 townhouses. So at 200 units, I think this is a good project that provides good parking ratios. I think we're at 2.18 parking spaces per unit overall. We have good open space, good amenity areas. So I think this checks off, in our opinion, checks off all the boxes. Hopefully, in your opinion, it checks off most all of the boxes. So that's kind of a bird's eye view of the overall development. We did, as I said, put together a comprehensive waiver list that we made sure we dotted all the i's, crossed all the t's, checked off all the boxes, and we poured through the zoning and the plans to make sure that we were complete in compiling all of the waivers that could be associated. We went through the zoning, the subdivision regulations, the stormwater bylaw, the wetland bylaw, and so we did a fairly comprehensive review of not only the zoning but all of the bylaws that would be potentially affecting this project in terms of waivers and compliance. So with that, I think that's kind of a quick overview, bird's eye view, so we all know what's before you, where we stand right now. And then if I know that Dan had provided a draft decision, we have all of our proposed waivers. So I think, which is why we brought Jason in because he's very thorough, and he tortured me.
As
But
I
it's for the
often do.
benefit of everybody. I was the fall guy. I took the heat. So, but he was very thorough, and that's just so that we can have one complete decision that is completely thorough and will make the process easier, not only now, but in the future.
John, through the chair, if I may, can you talk a little bit about, because there is one significant plan change that was presented for the first time, and that was the point of discharge for the stormwater management outflow.
Yes, so,
And the
Go ahead.
98% TSS removal, if you could talk a little bit about
Yes.
that, because it's important.
thank you. Yes, so, with our, as you know, we have our, stormwater management area in terms of an
Which
infiltration.
sheet are you looking at right now?
I'm sorry, I'm looking at C5
The grading plan?
grading plan.
Yep.
So if you look at sheet C5, that is where we are capturing stormwater from paved surfaces. As you know, we are distributing stormwater from all the roof runoff. That is getting distributed through the site through subsurface recharge. We went out and did soil testing with Jeff Walsh. There's good sandy gravelly material throughout the site. So we are distributing and recharging water throughout the site. But in terms of our infiltration basin, which is located at the northeast portion of the site, that is receiving and treating stormwater runoff. With our TSS calculations, that's a DEP standard for making sure that we provide adequate stormwater treatment. As you know, the state requirement under DEP is for 80% TSS removal. With the implementation of a swale, a stormwater swale along the northerly side of the property, and 2 sediment forebays, as well as obviously we have catch basins with deep sumps plus the infiltration basin. We are close to having 98% TSS removal. I know that was very important to the board because we do abut the Grafton Water District. There is a well located to the southeast of the site, so it was critically important that we don't just meet the bare minimum for stormwater treatment, that we more than exceed the requirement. So with our stormwater design and using all different elements, whether it's swales, deep sump catch basin, forebays, and an infiltration basin, close to 98% TSS removal. Additionally, there is a isolated wetland that kind of bisects our site and the water district site. So although that is not subject under the DEP regulations, isolated wetland is not jurisdictional, and it could be a potential isolated land subject to flooding. That does not have a buffer zone under the state regulations. However, just to provide as much treatment and not having any discharge within 100 feet of that local resource area, we do not have any what they call direct discharges within 100 feet of that isolated wetland or potential isolated land subject to flooding. The only outlet that we have from that infiltration basin is an emergency overflow. And if you see kind of behind the, near where the forebays are from the basin, you see it looks like a stone hatch pattern. That is just for an emergency spillway from the basin, and we made sure that that was outside of, although, again, it's not required under DEP regulations, just to make sure that we are in compliance to the extent that we can with all of the local bylaw. even though we're not necessarily subject to it, we kept that emergency spillway outside the 100-foot buffer to that isolated wetland. So we made sure that we were, the only disturbance within that area is just some off grading for grading so that we can have access around the berm. So we also made sure that we were adhering to the 25-foot local bylaw for no disturbance within 25 feet of a resource area. So we made sure that whether it was met all state codes and to the extent practical, we met all of the local bylaw regulations. So we were cognizant of those, and to the extent that we could, and we did, made sure that we adhered to all of the bylaws that we could, whether it's local, state, etc. So I think we were able, again, with this design to achieve a lot of those environmental concerns and design guidelines, and went over and above to the extent that we could to not only meet but exceed the requirements. Okay.
And I think if memory serves me correct, you and the peer reviewer agree that this is not ISLF, right? Isolated land subject to flooding.
No, there was another area that we had looked at.
Is that another
Me,
area?
Mr. Chairman, Jeff Walsh, Graves Engineering peer reviewer. With respect to the isolated land on the northeast side of the site, that was not a topic of my comments earlier at the beginning of this application with respect to isolated land subject to flooding under the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act. This isolated wetland may in fact be also isolated land subject to flooding under the state Wetlands Protection Act. That would be vetted out with the Conservation Commission. To qualify as isolated land subject to flooding, it has to hold at least a 1/4 acre foot of volume at an average depth of at least 6 inches of depth at some point during a year. And if that's the case, it is the highest water level observed, or there's also a method where you would run hydrology calculations, see if on an annual basis it qualifies as isolated land subject to flooding, and if the answer is yes, then you rerun them at a 100-year storm event, get that water surface elevation, figure out the perimeter, and that is the resource area defined as isolated land subject to flooding. This one probably qualifies as ILSF as far as I'm concerned based upon my experience. What doesn't qualify is the northeast corner,
Northwest.
thank you, northwest behind the properties of number 18 and 18 and a half Snow Road. There's a depression there. And I visited the depression. I couldn't find any significant staining that told me that there's typically standing water there. In the hydrology calculations I saw earlier on in this process, there was enough information that led me to believe that it doesn't, if one were to rely on hydrology calculations alone, it doesn't meet that threshold at the 1 year mark. So therefore it wouldn't qualify based upon hydrology. And again, the other way is by visual. Is water physically there? I didn't see evidence of it. So I doubt very much that northwest corner is isolated land subject to flooding.
Right, sir, you had your hand up. I mean, to everyone, we'll take comments and questions later, unless there's something very urgent and we can't see something or can't hear something.
Yes, I was just wondering if you could put the cursor on the overflow point. If you could stop it.
Right.
The emergency spillway?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
Right over
right.
here?
The dark area down below, just a little bit lower, a
Down,
little bit
down.
lower, a little
Oh, right
bit.
here.
Yep,
Yep.
right
There
there.
you go.
Thank you.
I have one other thing. In that area, there was a likely vernal pool, that's what the commission.
We'll get into that later.
Okay.
So I think we're wrapped up with this portion of the presentation. I think after we reviewed Mr. Walsh's peer review comments, taken together all of the information we've compiled, we're we're pretty confident that we've addressed throughout this long hearing process all issues raised of local concern, and we are, I don't want to say we're ready to close the public hearing. I think there's still discussion left to be had, and for other reasons, we just got the draft decision today, and I'd like to reserve having the opportunity to go through them, work with Dan Hill, and we've had a good working relationship over the past few weeks, I think. And not close the public hearing and preclude any additional comments and discussion, lest it be construed as new testimony. But with that, we're more than happy to answer any questions from the board or
Okay.
from any abutters.
So, any comments or questions from the board with respect to the on-site that's, been presented? And you'll notice I said on-site because clearly missing is off-site, and we'll get to that next, but I want to address, anything that anyone has on the on-site stuff.
On the plan itself. Just curious on your test pits, and I know it's a small item. Three of them you only went down 108 inches. Why? The other two you went down 10 feet. Just curious why. It said coarse gravel.
It was all coarse gravel. Let me,
I mean, you usually stop if you hit water or ledge, but
now which, let me take a look and see which.
the grading plan,
Yeah, no, I'm looking at
lower right.
test hole 3.
Peter, what page is
And
it?
it's just a curiosity. Oh, excuse me.
What page?
C5.
Sheet 5, C5.
Yeah,
Lower right.
I'm trying to see where I did test. Oh, there was test hole 4, test hole 5, test hole 3. It had to be in the front.
The two front ones were both at 10 feet, 120 inches.
Where's test hole? Where's test hole 3 on here? Here's 4. There is. I'm trying to.
Test hole 3 is at the back right corner of building number 1.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. You know, it was all good bony material. I don't know. Maybe could we have seen a rock or something?
No.
Or,
I went out and witnessed. A lot of times I'll do my homework. Okay, if it's a shallow basin, as long as we get
Right.
deep enough to demonstrate there's
Yeah.
at least 2 to 4 foot groundwater offset, we may stop. I wasn't leading the parade, so however deep they wanted to go, I didn't take exception to it, Peter. Quite frankly, beautiful material.
Oh, I imagine.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I believe we were deep enough that they could demonstrate they satisfy the groundwater offset requirement for when they were intending to get some kind of infiltration facility over
right.
there.
And that's what, 9 feet?
Yeah,
So-
8.5, almost 9.
8.5, 9 feet. With the recharge chambers, these are fairly, where they're just capturing the roof runoff. It's not like you have to be down, you know, when you're capturing, say, from a catch basin to a manhole, all of a sudden you get deeper, 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 then where you end up with the recharge, you may end up being, 3, 4, 5 feet deep, where these are just capturing the downspouts. You only need say a foot or 2 of cover.
No, you're not. I know you're not
You're
gonna
not
be down
going
that
that
deep.
deep. So, and that's the case with all of these buildings. So, we were on a slope and maybe there was something, but we're only going to be down, say 3, 4, 5, say 5 feet with the bottom of any of these recharge chambers. So it wasn't like
But you didn't hit water or
no,
refusal.
no, it was all good sand, gravel material. There was no issues.
Okay.
Other comments or questions from the board? So, I have one, and this was discussed, I think, at the last, hearing. That fire lane in the back, I believe, the fire department wanted paved, and it looks like it's still not necessarily paved.
What they want it to be a solid surface. whether it's asphalt, concrete, something that is going to be plowed, something that's going to be, you know, we're not gonna just do, you know, a gravel pathway that's not gonna be solid, or if they have to put their outriggers on, which I believe they need 18 feet. What we would, it will be solid, it will be impervious, it will be plowable. What we're talking internally about is trying to provide that access, but also make it something that looks nice. It could be part of a walking path around the back, so it doesn't look like someone just, you know, put down the paver and ran a strip of pavement around the back where, but, and it was stated by the fire department, because we did meet with two gentlemen from the fire department, that they want that to be solid and they want it to be plowable year round, not something that in the wintertime is, you know, everybody's gonna forget about it and it's just gonna end up being, you know, disregarded. So we're looking into something that meets the qualifications of obviously being impervious, being drivable, being plowable, but something that we can incorporate into almost an amenity, have a nice looking walking path around the back of the building.
Okay, so that's an open issue at this point.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And we obviously if it came down to it and we paved it, okay, we'll pave it. But if we can think of anything else that might be more aesthetically pleasing, we would all obviously run that by the fire department to make sure that cuts muster with them.
So why not show it as paved and propose that as a change later once you identify?
We can do that. We can do it. We don't have an issue doing that. We're just kind of kept on running it around the block, so to speak.
And they're okay with the 20-foot wide.
Yes, they're outriggers, 18 feet wide.
That
so.
just means they got to line it up dead center when they go to park.
They got a foot on either side.
Have they got a
I'm only
set of
joking.
these yet?
Yes, when I emailed it out to everybody, I emailed it to all the departments also.
Are we waiting for comments?
Yeah. I
From
will
the
reach
fire
out. I know
department.
Mike's been in and out. I will reach out to him again tomorrow morning.
But we did discuss 20 feet with them when we sat down with them. We didn't pick that out of the hat.
On my perspective, in addition to being able to carry the weight of the fire truck year round, with respect to the surface treatment, I don't like to see gravel or topsoil over gravel, because there's the time of year when this topsoil will be wet and be slippery and you can't get traction. And there is a slope behind building number one. So there are things like pervious pavers infilled with topsoil and some grass. Pervious pavers that are infilled with pea stone and such that will support the weight of a fire truck. So there is a number of different options, and those kind of pervious pavers do have the friction that you need to be able to get through in the wet conditions.
So Dan, you know, because this is, you know, privately owned, privately maintained, et cetera, there's a lot of things we don't necessarily have to get into, right? I mean, they're gonna have to plow the driveways, or their tenants are gonna be upset, you know? But something like that, I mean, what can we do to make sure that it is in fact plowed? I mean, I suppose we can make it a condition of the permit. There's probably not a whole lot more that we can do.
Not that I can think of, no.
Okay, all right.
It's an enforcement issue.
Yeah, okay. You know where I'm headed. I just, you know, I can see it very easily being ignored. And nobody will know, because it's all the way at the back. There's absolutely no way to see it. And, you know, nobody's gonna know until the fire department shows up to try
Yeah,
to drive down there.
right, and I think, you know, obviously the fire department can do inspections, surprise inspections during storms and
Yeah,
fine them or bring enforcement actions if they want to.
okay, all right.
Well, they're talking about active there.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? So then I'm gonna go to what's going on with the offsite stuff. 'Cause I
So-
mean, that really was a huge focus of the last couple of meetings.
And there's a lot, if I could step in, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I wanted to get a handle on process, and I think we probably hit town council and maybe the town administrator's office at a time when everybody was prepping for town meeting. That town meeting warrant closed, I believe, on March 26th, around the time we filed this supplemental information. Prior to that, I was trying outreach to town council unsuccessfully. And I suspect too, if I'm town council, I'm probably waiting for a decision from the board as well to make sure that whatever we're asking is baked in. So I don't have a sense of process with regard to takings, which would be required. I know there was significant discussion, and I'm glad you raised it, honestly. I know there was significant discussion about this condition. I just drove out of that intersection, and there needs to be some improvement without a doubt. And the project team members have offered to help the town out in that regard. However, I think what makes sense is, regardless of the taking schedule with the town, and we'll work that out, I think we ought to start thinking about maybe, as a suggestion, that the condition be tied to an application to DOT at around the same time the building permit application, or the building permit is actually granted, because the fact of the matter is, I can't see DOT acting, the taking set in stone, and the actual construction of the intersection take place. Whatever DOT decides, by the way, it's a discretionary permit. Level of service, site distances are going to improve, so I can't see DOT significantly getting in the way of an application, but they could change the outcome. They could say, well, we don't like this idea, why don't you consider this, that type of thing. So we let that play out, but not hold up the building permit, because I can't see all of that happening within a year, and then your units fall off the SHI. And you're basically going to be 200 units down. So I think that if we can commit to getting the application into DOT, getting the process going, letting that play out, but also being able to have our building permit and start construction, I think that's a good result.
I can give you also an additional update, because obviously the Housing Authority.
Oh, right. And you met with them.
Housing Authority is obviously an integral part of this. As you know, we've stated to the board that they're on board with, and we did actually meet with them a few weeks ago. And we had told them, well, actually it was probably,
Around beginning of March, I think.
it was beginning of March.
March 9th, I think.
Time goes by. We said that what we were reaching out to town council, we were trying to get paperwork in order, trying to get, a draft warrant out. And Jason said, he said he had reached out. I'm sure everybody, between town meeting, everybody's going in different directions. We were unsuccessful with that. We did give them an update that showed that last plan, obviously having the turn, so we're more 90 degrees to 122, the turning lane, the sidewalk. We also relayed to them that we might need some temporary grading easement just for sight distances when you're looking to the right coming out onto 122. So they are fully aware of what we're doing. They are still fully on board with what we are doing. we also suggested to them that, we also confirmed that although, you know, they do have some ties to mass housing because they do have affordable, but there is no type of review or approval that we need from the state. They, the housing authority, own and are in full control of this, so there's no other outside agencies that need to chime in. I think we already have enough. So they are in full control of making the decision. We did suggest that they may want to have their attorney look at this too. We will be having a deed. We did show them a plan. So we're trying to put all those plans together in conjunction with input from town council, et cetera. So it's herding cats right now. But we're proactively reaching out, proactively trying to work towards this. And we did have some internal conversations saying, well, nothing is preventing us from, at this point, you know, with your blessing, getting an application moving with DOT to start the curb cut modification process with them. As you know, this was a hot topic. We are definitely, you know, committed to making these improvements. It's the issue is with different entities involved. It's time consuming. It's time consuming.
So I think, just if I could supplement that, I think all of this can be accomplished through DOT, through letters of intent and that type of thing without actually having the takings in place. And I've been authorized by the development team to work with town council and do the yeoman's work of drafting the warrant articles and that type of thing. The easement deeds, if we go the easement route or an actual taking in fee, doesn't matter as long as we can accomplish, you know, the improvements, the offsite improvements. And I want to make it clear too that this is offsite mitigation. We want to make sure that even though it's referenced in the permit that it's not a project-related improvement, but a town improvement, and that's important because we have a MEPA trigger if it is part of the project, and we want to avoid that. And it is an improvement. I mean, the level of service, the site distances today are horrible. I mean,
Okay, so there's
so a couple of things going on.
three things. And
Yeah.
Dan, I'm gonna ask you to address the last point on the MEPA thing, but okay, let's back up a minute.
Yes.
I think this board was very clear that we did not want, if I remember correctly, we did not want building permits. I think I was actually saying occupancy, but others are saying building. I think the consensus was no building permits until this was, you know, until this was constructed. And I don't think we want to back away from that. I do not want to get in a situation where, for whatever reason, this thing's come off the rails and you guys have buildings and now we're in a position where, you know, what are we gonna do, tell you to tear the buildings down? You know, I don't want to get in that situation. So,
Right.
and I don't think the board wants to get in that situation. So I do believe that all of that needs to be addressed before we get into construction. Okay, and by addressed, I don't mean starting the permit. I mean, you've got shovels in the ground building that intersection. But that's hopping over a more important issue, and that's at the last meeting, we talked about different grades, right? We talked about a proposal for a lesser grade. I think Jeff actually proposed it, and what happened with that? Did you look to design that, and where did that end up?
So we, our understanding was, well, we do have for a short, I think it's about 100-foot stretch going from the landing area at 122, going up to about the first driveway for Maxwell Drive, going a short stint of 10% through that. If we did reduce the slope, I want to say by 1%, and we would have to extend that out just about to where the driveway that accesses number 6 and number 8. That would extend it out and reduce the slope by 1%. We did, and Jeff had drawn that out. We have that pretty much wrapped up. We were kind of inundated with, compiling all the plans and whatnot for this, but we do, what it comes down to is we could reduce the slope. We'd have to extend and drop the road a little bit to extend that out by dropping the grade from a short, I think it was about 100 feet long at 10% to drop it down to 9%, which, I would ask Jeff his opinion whether that accomplishes anything, meaningful, where it's just the 10% is for a short stretch. We do have an adequate landing area, so we do have a plan. I just wanted to make sure it was complete and had all the information on it before that was finalized. But in our opinion, and obviously your opinion is critical in this too. For the additional length and disturbance of the road, it doesn't really accomplish a whole lot by dropping for a stretch from 10% to 9%.
But if I may, I'm sorry, John needs to provide that plan. We've
Right.
committed to providing it. And I think that discussing it and out of that context, is kind of not discussing it with full information. And I
think I agree with you. I
Yeah.
just need to clarify, because I was almost
Yeah.
hearing two different things from you. So I think what I'm hearing, and I think what the attorney has just backed up is, you can design what Jeff had proposed.
We can.
You're not in love with it, you question whether it's necessary, but you can, and you plan to design that.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes,
So that is another open issue.
Check that.
With respect to whether, we can get some opinion from Jeff as to whether it's accomplished anything or not, but none of us are traffic designers or, that sort of thing, so I think we tend to,
Agreed.
right, so.
Agreed.
And he did propose it, and I assume for a legitimate reason, so, I think we're.
You mean you don't know the AASHTO handbook?
Exactly.
Like the back of your hand.
So, all right, so that's an open issue that needs to be addressed.
Right. The other item, then we did, I just sent it into Katrina earlier, was we did previously show the distance from the right-of-way and from the abutting stone wall that is on I think it's number 6 Snow Road. And we did update that to include.
What page are you looking at?
I'm sorry, no, this was a
It's
separate,
different.
you could probably,
You have it, I gave it to you in your packets today,
Okay.
but I'll pull it up.
When did this come in?
Did?
When was this from?
yeah. This was, we just included all of what the existing widths.
Oh, that's the plan you filed last month.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
added additional information to it, which includes where the utility poles are, where the existing crosswalk is going across Snow Road from Maxwell Drive, the widths of the driving aisles, where the striping is. So the purpose of this was to show that to install a sidewalk on the easterly side of Snow Road along the frontage where we don't have the ability to cross onto abutters' properties. We only have 3 feet of width before the shoulder of Snow Road. The driving aisles because there's a, there's a center, a double center line yellow center line in the center of Snow Road, and then there are on the shoulders the curb line stripe. So those driving aisles are only 10 feet wide each. So if we were to widen up or add a sidewalk, a 4-foot sidewalk, you need 6 inches to a foot for the curbing. We would be significantly going into the northbound driving aisle. And on the other side of the road, there's the existing curb, there's existing utility poles and a rather narrow sidewalk, particularly where you have to walk around the back side of the utility poles that it necks down the sidewalk. So what we have proposed and again committed to doing is to redoing the sidewalk on the other side. There are areas on both sides of Maxwell Drive where they have minimal or non-conforming handicap ramps. We would add a crosswalk across, going from one side, north side to the south side of Maxwell Drive, and making meaningful improvements to the sidewalk on the other side of the street. And we've been out there a number of times. There are residents over at the Maxwell Drive apartments. There are, I believe, mostly elderly residents over there. And to have the improvements on that side of the road, have improved handicap ramps, improved crosswalks across Maxwell Drive to tie into the existing sidewalk that's closer to the Grafton Country Plaza, that would be a nice improvement. I think they're going to be the highest intensity users for sidewalks and crosswalks on that side. I have seen some elderly women, walking and then trying to, make their way to get over to the existing sidewalk that's on closer to Country Plaza, and it's narrow over there in that sidewalk. So I think if we concentrated on that and made some good improvements and made that really functional and up to code, I think it would be a big improvement, particularly for those folks.
Go ahead, Dan.
So the reason I had asked for a plan that had more of the details on it was to test the feasibility of constructing the sidewalk on the east side of Snow Road, which for obvious reasons is preferable because it doesn't require any project resident to cross Snow Road. Without that, a project resident would have to cross Snow Road twice to get to Stop and Shop. So what this plan shows is what we thought, which is that there's 3 feet of available width between the existing property line and the existing edge of pavement in the northbound lane. The wall is actually not a limiting factor, which we thought it was, but it's actually not because it's on the other side of the property line. So the limiting factor is that there's only 3 feet between the property line and the northbound lane. But if the road is reconstructed in accordance with the plan that Jeff had drawn up, which creates the 8.9% grade, that work is going up to just south of the driveway that's between number 8 and number 6 Snow Road. So can you actually,
What do you want?
yeah, just point, use your.
Oh, right here.
Yeah, so south of that, right around,
Yeah,
that's
go
too,
up the
that's
sheet,
too far
up,
south.
up, right about there.
Yeah, right
That would be the end of the work.
So if there's work happening in Snow Road at that point anyway, then this road could be shifted west. The travel lanes could be shifted west by a foot or two. And if you see on the plan, there's actually space between the travel lane and the existing curb. There's probably a foot there. And then there's an additional foot or two before you get to the property line. So, and there is a utility pole that's in the way. But
There's multiple right down there's one right there where we have the labeled utility pole, but
Right.
there's a line of utility poles that
well, I think
go.
there's only one more, John, isn't there? The other one's north.
There's one north, but there's other ones that are south going down towards 122 as well.
Okay, but in terms of, I mean, I know the concern was moving utility poles to build a sidewalk, but if that pole is going to have to be adjusted anyway, and I don't know if it will be, but if you're changing the grade, that pole may need to be moved anyway.
If you're changing the grade, if you're going up, you run into the possibility of compromising the clearance under the wires, and if you're going down, you run into the possibility of compromising how much utility pole's in the ground and whether or not it's gonna be stable and has to be reset deeper. These poles in the sidewalk are inline poles. They move a lot easier than poles with intersection of wires, such as down at Worcester Street and Snow Road. With that much wire on the poles coming in and making an intersection, there's a lot of work, a lot of money, in my opinion. Moving an inline pole to make it deeper, if you have to put it in deeper because the sidewalk got cut down because the road cut down, to me, that's the equivalent of replacing a pole after a crash into a pole that was damaged. And if it's gotta be moved to the left or right a little bit, it's probably very low effort. The equivalent of, again, replacing a pole after a crash. I'm just trying to think about the big picture, and if it could achieve a sidewalk on the east side, the entire length, that's a huge win, in my opinion. I went out there, the day I was there with Dan, there were two individuals walking down the side of the street without a sidewalk. Again, I've said this before in this meeting, I wouldn't do it, but other people will. Nevertheless, you know, if there can be a slight shift in the location of the road enough to the left to make the sidewalk work, that's a huge win for the town and for the project.
And I think I've heard differing opinions as to how hard it is to move a pole. And I think, Peter, you were telling me that you've had some experience with this.
Well, just on Quincy Corner, but it took a year or two.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a major intersection too.
Right. But when you're talking about a pole that's, as Jeff described, is not a major intersection and a car crashes into a pole, that pole gets replaced.
I
So-
don't think most of the work is moving the pole. Most of the work is just paperwork,
Getting them there.
scheduling it.
Right. So I think we would be well served by having Jeff look at this plan, give us an opinion, and maybe talk to Paul Canoyer and have him give us opinion as to whether, as part of the Snow Road reconstruction work, that's gonna have to happen anyway, is it feasible to add a sidewalk on the east side by
This is-
shifting the lanes over?
This pole is totally different than the ones at Quinsigamon Corner that took forever. I mean, this would be like the one right at Worcester Street that we're gonna go around.
Yep.
That would be a major,
Like Quinsigamon Corner.
yeah,
Yeah,
that would be
I
a
agree
major
with
one.
you.
This is just,
Inline pole.
it's getting in there.
So there's a pole that's gonna have to be relocated at the intersection of Worcester Street?
No, originally, under the original layout, that was gonna be required. The proposed intersection, the horizontal layout, is avoiding moving that pole, which is a T intersection of wires.
The easiest way to get them there, let's face it, is when they start doing the digging to fix the intersection, is just back into it hard with a load. It'll be moved in 2 days.
And insurance will cover it.
Are you speaking from experience?
Any volunteers?
Yeah.
Look, I think if I may, it doesn't make sense to, obviously the board has discretion, but it doesn't make sense to continue talking about this until we see John's plans and the different concepts and the different design alternatives. And we can't ignore cost, right? You know, there's a cost tolerance in this project, and the improvement at Snow Road and 122 is significant. And the more that gets piled onto that has to be evaluated in the context of whether or not we're uneconomic now. So all of it needs to be really looked at, and I agree with the chair. It's an open item, and we need to look at it more carefully. And we need to know what our options are. And me coming in over the last couple of months, I certainly am not in a position to suggest I know what the options are. So
But it,
we'll provide the plan, we've committed to it, or the alternative plans, and it's now a priority, really.
Right.
I mean, it's been a priority, but now it's, the rubber's meeting the road, right?
Yeah, so I think the takeaway has to be that, I'm looking at the, the Google, image of Snow Road right now. That sidewalk on the west side with the poles in the middle of it is,
The public housing side?
yeah,
Yep.
quite frankly, it's awful.
Housing authority.
Yeah,
I don't think somebody could, maneuver a wheelchair down there without going into the grass. At a couple of points, 2 or 3 different points.
yeah, no, it's
So I think there would be an opportunity to make it a lot better for the town. And I think the takeaway is, I think we'd really like you to look at it hard.
understood.
Especially there's a lot of work going on. I'd hate to think that this road is getting rebuilt and we didn't necessarily take the opportunity to try and make
Everything.
everything right.
Understood.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I just received an email from a select board member to remind the developer that part of the lip that you agreed to with the select board was to put a sidewalk in from the development down to Snow Road.
Right.
Yeah,
On
and we
the
reviewed
east
that.
side?
Yeah, so,
It
On the
was
east side?
No, on the west. That's not.
on the west side.
On the west side?
Yeah, we reviewed that.
Okay, it was just sent it to me, so I was just
Yeah,
bringing it up.
no, we did, and at the time, as part of the LIP, we did commit to making sure we had a sidewalk, not on the east side, but on the west side, making improvements on that side.
Right.
Because that came up, I don't know, a number of months ago.
Yes.
And,
Yeah, it did. I remember that.
And we went, oh, no, what do,
No, I know.
what do we
Like I
say?
said, it was just
And
sent to
so
me.
we double checked it.
But understanding our options is critical here.
Understood.
And I think, I don't want to waste the public's time or the board's time.
Right.
All right, so
we'll-
that remains an open issue.
Yes.
Mr. McCusker?
Yes.
I want to just apply a little pressure to the development team to take a real hard look and thought about the 8.9% up to just short of the driveways number 6 and 8.
Yeah,
As proposed, where there would be a 10% grade, that grade would tie in at the south side of Maxwell Drive intersection. That intersection would not be affected by the improvements, but what it would create is not a smooth transition vertically. There's a bit of an abrupt change. I can't it might be somewhere around 2% abrupt change. Anything over 0.5%, you want to make sure you have a vertical curve. That's not on what was originally proposed with the 10% grade. The 8.9% does achieve vertical alignment and vertical curve where necessary.
okay, I know what you're saying.
Yep, I don't think it compromised the sight line. I was just doing a little sketch, if you will, here to see if sight line over the abrupt change was compromised. I don't believe that's the case, but it's still an uncomfortable abrupt change, and the smooth transition is much better. And again, it takes it down from 10% to about 8.9 I came up with, but I was drawing by hand, so there's plus and minus, but only a little bit. But I think transitioning, it's another 150 feet worth of work, but of course, it's also at the Maxwell Drive intersection. There's excavation and removal of earth, so it's not just a linear distance or square footage amount of work. It's also volumetric as to how long it takes to cut down the road, replace the gravel base, and so on and so forth. But again, if that's looked at, and then they're able to look at if does the road shift away from the east side a little bit, create a room for sidewalk on the east side, and then find locations for the telephone poles, they'd probably only move a few feet in order to make the west sidewalk much better, and of course, provide the handicap ramps that are missing over on the 2 Maxwell Drive intersections. It's a huge win for the area.
Just one final question, and I'm for the east side, but I did notice the existing concrete sidewalk is on Country
Right.
Plaza's property. So
You-
to tie into that,
Yeah.
what's that involve?
I do not know if it's on private property.
I mean, do we
or
make
there's
an
easement.
S
It-
to go into it, or go aside of it for a couple of feet, or?
I would, I would just get in touch with those guys
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
make a deal.
Yep.
They're not gonna complain about it.
I
We're
wouldn't
giving
think-
them business.
I wouldn't think, right, no, I wouldn't think they would.
Can I keep this, Joe?
but I-
But if necessary, yeah, you could curve it in.
But I don't want it to come up later.
No, that's a good,
Very valid point, Peter, because I see the sidewalk is essentially entirely on private property, that of Grafton Country Plaza LLC.
It gets
Yeah.
trickier too if we're sliding the road to the west. Then it's even further out of alignment with the sidewalk that's already there.
Good point.
yeah, it looks like that sidewalk was probably built when Country Plaza was.
I think it was done
think it
because they
was.
did a
Pretty old.
whole, if you look, they have steps going up to it, and there's the concrete, so that was done, I think, as part of,
By the way, I heard a rumor at one point of you're looking into maybe going directly from your property down onto something.
going, there was a number of months ago, a brief discussion, with the owner of the plaza to try to go around the back of 6 and 8 and try to create a path that way. And the communication kind of fizzled. I think they're in they're in the process of selling that property as well, so. We had some discussions, I think it was before the holidays
Okay.
with them.
Is that a 20 or 30-foot drop
Where?
from your property down to Country Plaza?
Oh, yeah, no, but we're talking about going around 6 and 8 and then coming back. We had discussed going around them, and there is a strip you can see on that plan, Peter, there's a strip that, where the sidewalk ends. There's that strip that goes perpendicular to Snow Road, that's also owned by the plaza. So we're going around the back side of those two lots and then
Oh, I thought
coming
you
out the
meant,
back way,
I
and then, no, not going straight down the hill.
okay.
You'd need skis. Going around the back side of 6 and 8 and then popping out to the existing sidewalk. But that would, be kind of just direct access from the apartment project around the backside of those abutters to get out there. So instead of going across their frontage, we'd go around the backside of them.
Yeah,
But as I see it, it's about a 20, closer to 30-foot change in elevation to get from the 14 Snow Road project to the back pavement area behind the buildings. Closer, right around 30 feet.
If you went straight
Yeah,
down.
no,
Well, you gotta come down 30 feet, whether you do it in 30 horizontal feet or
Oh, yeah.
300 horizontal feet.
And-
You still gotta come down 30 feet.
Right, and also on the back side of Stop and Shop in that area, they have, there's I think a good-sized retaining wall.
there is. There absolutely is.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but that's not what we're talking about. We're just
That's not
talking-
what we're talking about, we're talking about looping up around.
Yeah, and actually,
Coming out.
if you actually were gonna do that, it might actually bring 6 and 8 to the table about, okay,
Yeah,
let's put it in the front.
that
Yeah,
could
we
go
don't want all these
unnoticed.
people walking
Well-
behind my house.
Yeah, I know, that was, yeah, like, well, that might make us less popular.
All right, Dan, the point about the MIPA review, I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, I mean, it's the applicant's responsibility to file an environmental notification form with MIPA if this project trips any of the triggers. And I don't think it does. I don't think this project does. The triggers have to do with the number of parking spaces, the number of trips that are generated, the impervious area, whether there's a sewer connection. There's like, what, 15 or 20 different criteria that could apply. I don't think this project trips any of them. It doesn't really affect us at all. It's a state law they have to comply with.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Right, but I mean, you know, what I heard the applicant saying was he wanted to separate the off-site from the on-site, and I'm not even sure necessarily what that means. In other projects, we've issued a comprehensive,
Yep.
we've issued a comprehensive permit, and it includes conditions that require off-site improvements. and that's that. I mean, so I guess I'm not understanding what that really means or what your point is.
So, yes, in the general context, there are off-site improvements, there are on-site improvements. The improvements to Route 122 and Snow Road should happen regardless of whether this development is built or not. I mean, it's a pre-existing historic condition that needs to be dealt with by the town. It's convenient that we are proposing this development and it can be all wrapped in at the same time.
Yep.
But it's really, I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's really not a project related improvement. It's really mitigation for the town. It's an improvement for the benefit of the town and to the benefit of remedying a historic problem on Snow Road. And I think we need to make that clear in the condition that it is an off-site town mitigation. It's something that we offered, to do or agreed to do as a part of the LIP, but it's not essential for this project to move forward. Does that make sense?
No, because it is essential for this project to move forward, because without the improvements, the service level of the intersection goes down. And, for the density that's being proposed, this is a requirement. If we can't fix the service level, then the density is gonna have to go way down for this project, so.
My understanding is that the service level goes down to an F without this project.
In the future.
In the future or today?
Yeah, right now it's an E,
It's an E, but
and then
Okay.
with future traffic increases.
got it, regardless of this
Whether
project
this
or
gets
not.
built or not.
Got it.
It goes to an F. By us.
When?
I don't know how many years down the road they
What's the
look.
projection?
It's 5 years.
Because you usually, in a traffic study, project out 5, 10, 20 years. We can definitely get that for you. It's in the traffic
Well, it's
study.
in the traffic study.
It is in the
I don't
traffic study,
recall
but
that,
It
but
does,
Sure.
it does, with or without us, it does go from an E to an F. With us, and obviously with the turning lane, it goes to, I believe it's a B in the morning and a C in the afternoon in the peak. I think that's what it was. So with or without us, it goes to an F. With the improvements that we're obviously obligated and committed to doing, it will significantly, not just, and we did talk about this, level of service is more, the queuing of cars. So, and then we had talked about it with the traffic engineers, we could keep the same alignment, have a right turn lane. The level of service still would be a B and a C.
Yep.
From a practical standpoint, by realigning it, making it more of a 90-degree, that's not built into the numbers, but it's built into the reality.
Right,
of
exactly. But the bottom line is I'm not understanding the point. I almost feel like you're trying to kind of hedge bets here a little bit by getting, by saying something. There'll be a condition in the permit that
Yes.
says these off-site improvements can be done, period.
Correct.
The
Yes.
fact that it is or isn't a historical problem, the fact that it is or isn't something that has to be done eventually anyways, I don't see where that has a role in our comprehensive permit.
Where we are,
Am I out of line, Dan?
No, you're right, and this is really an issue between them and MIPA, so it's, we're gonna have our condition that's gonna require this work. You can convince MIPA if you'd like that you don't have to file an ENF. That's between you and them.
Yeah, I don't take that position, honestly. And I think there's a way we can craft it that satisfies the project development and satisfies the town and gets you the improvement at the same time. It's, as you pointed out in our conversations, Dan, it's a matter of wordsmithing and making sure that all of our expectations and outcomes are aligned. That's all. No one's trying to game anything. No one's trying to change what the ultimate outcome is going to be, which is to create an improvement there.
Yeah.
It's just the manner in which we do it.
But I think that the timing and the sequence is important.
Exactly.
So I really encourage an offline discussion about the timing, because,
Why an offline discussion?
well, if we can do a side workshop and have a fully vetted discussion either between me and Dan or maybe John, the peer reviewer, and again, we don't suggest walking away from the responsibility that has been agreed to by the project team. That's not what's at issue. I think it's in our mutual best interest to figure out a way that we can maintain these 200 units on your subsidized housing inventory while at the same time allowing us to proceed with a building permit, so long as the commitment, figuring out a way to hold our feet to the fire, if you will, so long as the commitment is actively in process.
That's not going to
Because-
fly.
Yeah, I think this board has been pretty clear on that. That's not going to fly. And speaking just for myself, I could care less about the SHI.
Okay.
That's not one of our goals. So, I think this board has been very clear. And actually, I've been more lenient. I'm the one who was saying occupancy, but everyone else has been pretty clear that, no building permits. And I understand that because I know exactly where this is going to go. There's too many places where this could come off the rails. Town meeting could say no. Right? So there's different places. I mean, that pole in the center, I can see where DOT is saying you can't do that. So there's so many places come off the rails, and I don't want to be in a situation where you've got buildings built, and we're here because you're asking for a change to the comprehensive permit. There's no way in heck we're gonna be able to say no. Right? The reality, I mean, we could, but
So let's play that scenario out, because I'm glad you raised it. We don't expect that the DOT is going to say no. They might not say yes to every aspect of the plan. They, as I indicated before, but what if they do say no? What if town meeting says no? Now I have a condition that renders the project ultimately uneconomic and unbuildable. And then we're at the Housing Appeals Committee. That's the reality
well,
of it.
hopefully you came back here first. You would have, of course.
Right.
And we work through what is the issue and how do we get through that.
Right. And what I'm suggesting is that we have that conversation now, because no one is suggesting that we're trying to shirk the responsibility of doing it. We just want to at least have the board consider that, we do it in a manner that aligns with mutual.
We've been considering this for 18 months.
Yeah, no, I know that.
How much?
We can't do it now. We don't know what the problem is. Okay, if it's town meeting said no, okay, that's a bigger problem than this is just going to cost us way too much money because we got to move that big pole. There's maybe ways we can deal with that piece of it, right? So we can't deal with that issue now. So it's going to be a case of no building permit until that is at least being constructed. We know it's happening. And if it comes off the rails, and it can at multiple junctures, then we come back and we talk about it. We work through what's it going to take, right? And if it turns out that the only thing you can do is the turn lane that had been proposed, and maybe we need to make some adjustments to density or do some other things. But we work through the problem once we know what the problem is.
Well, I think we know what the problem is. We've got a difficult intersection at Snow Road and 122.
No, but what problem is preventing you from doing it, from making the improvements?
Well, there's a process, and it's not a matter of if. It's the the time frame in which the process is going to unfold, and it's
Right,
going to
and you
take a
have-
very long time.
This
That's what I'm
application's been
suggesting.
Pending for a year, and
Sure.
no progress has been made on that intersection. And I'm sure
Well-
some, conversations could have been had, and but at this stage, it's not something that I'm willing to just start over and look at this as some new problem you're running into. We've raised this from the very first meeting, probably the first minutes of the first meeting. This was problem aid number one, and to revisit this now and try to change the sequence when we've been absolutely clear that there would be a condition that this intersection was improved prior to building permits. I don't know why we're revisiting that now, or why
Yeah.
there's any indication from the board that we're going to waiver on that.
Brian, if I could add on, I think,
Yeah.
I think with due respect, I think you're kind of panicking a little bit too much. What you need is DOT approval, okay? Town's gonna support that. Zoning board's gonna support that. This is an improvement to the intersection with this project or without the project, right? The other thing you need is housing authority deeds. You've already met with the housing authority. They're willing to give you the easement or the deed. They say DHC approval is not required. I'm not sure that's correct, but whatever, we'll figure that out. If it's required, you get DHC approval. They're not gonna say no. Then you get town meeting approval, right? And town meeting approval is to shift the road or change the layout of the road a little bit and accept the deed from the housing authority. So why wouldn't the town accept
I mean,
that? We don't know, but yes.
We don't know,
Okay,
and
but let's not panic, right? As Bill said, we're worrying about something that's happening 6 months or a year from now. Let's cross that bridge when we get to it. There's no reason for us sitting here today to think that those 3 approvals are not viable. I think they're completely viable.
I'm not suggesting they're not viable. And I think we're saying somewhat the same thing. I'm not even suggesting that we're not going to get town meeting approval. I'm not suggesting we're not going to get DOT approval. I'm not suggesting any of that. We might not. I could easily see, and the chair raised this scenario, not me. I could easily see people showing up at town meeting as an end run around the board to try to defeat the project. I could certainly see that. I don't know what the environment is for housing in the town, but if it's like anywhere else in the Commonwealth, and I'm at several communities throughout, it's, these are difficult conversations.
I don't think it's, Grafton's a different town. Grafton is very supportive of affordable housing, and I just don't see sitting here today that being even a possibility. When the votes are not for the project, the votes are for the intersection, and everybody uses this intersection. So I think it's really something that we should be worrying about down the road. And if for some reason one of these 3 approvals doesn't happen, then you come back to the board and we talk about modifications to the project that might be acceptable with fewer improvements in the intersection.
I think I think the reality is, and Stephen Acosta said this at the last meeting or a past meeting. I think y'all want to get going and start building.
We do.
And I get that. And maybe it's a case of, you get through some of this process and maybe you get all your approvals, but you know what, it's going to take us another year before something can happen, but for whatever reason, maybe you have to move that pole, and it's going to be a
Right.
year. Then you come back to it and say, look, we got this, we got this, we got this. We're ready to roll. We'll put some money here. We'd like to start building. Then maybe the board says, yep, looks like you guys are really good to go on that, and we make that change at that time.
Okay.
I mean, I've been with, I think it's at least 10 40Bs. Not a single one of them hasn't had to come back and ask for some sort of change to the permit. So we just do it. Okay. We cross that bridge when we get there, but we're not gonna, I think the board has been clear that we're not gonna give you, start building before we know that intersection is gonna get fixed. And as certainly, John, as you know, we spent more time talking about that darn intersection
know.
than anything else, I think. So
Understood.
it's important
Now,
to this board.
and
Okay.
you just saying that we're looking to work together. And one of the,
Yeah.
we know that right now you've fallen out of safe harbor. This project will keep you in safe harbor. So the opinion was, well, if we can keep this project moving forward, it keeps you, at your numbers, and it allows us time because it's like been herding cats, so we can try to grind through some of the administrative. So that was the rationale. Not that we're trying to look for a loophole or shirk a responsibility. We're looking to do it, but we were of the
Right.
impression that it would be mutually beneficial
And-
to keep your numbers where they need to be, and it gives us time to kind of get moving and herd some cats and get through process, whether it's with town council, through town meeting, through DOT, but again, we're fully committed to making improvements to that intersection.
And, the suggestion that we're somehow speculating down the road and we're not being proactive, we have been proactive. John met with the housing authority. I've been reaching out to town council. I spoke with the town administrator's office maybe 2 months ago. So we are trying to get that level of engagement. And it hasn't borne fruit yet. And I don't know what the motivation is for town council to not return multiple calls. I can only imagine maybe they were getting ready for town meeting. Maybe they want your decision first before they move forward and commit. We were trying to get the process advanced, and we had every intention on getting on the town meeting warrant for March, and it just didn't happen.
And do you need those discussions to be done before you even start a conversation with DOT?
No, we can, I don't know that conversations with DOT have been started, but no, I think I mentioned this earlier, that we can start the conversation with DOT. I think we would probably need at least some non-binding commitments from the housing authority through letters of intent and that type of thing to present to the DOT, but it's a chicken or the egg type thing, right? What comes first? Does DOT want to act without the property being in place? On the other hand, does DOT want to tie their hands that, gee, you've only taken this amount of property, but we think you need that amount of property. We think you need something different, so.
Well, DOT doesn't need to see the actual property being conveyed at this point.
No, they do not. That's
agree
my
with
point.
you. It would
That's
be
my
helpful
point.
to show them that there's an agreement in place to do it. But
Right.
the town, I don't think it makes sense for the housing authority to convey land and for the town
No.
to accept land until DOT has approved the project. So that definitely comes first. And so as soon as this permit is issued,
Right.
the next day, you should be at DOT with an application for a curb cut, or not a curb cut permit, but a road modification permit.
Yeah, it's a curb cut modification, but, all right, so
I think we're in sync on this.
We're in.
we are.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Yes.
Just in terms of the sequencing, 'cause I had this thought when I was going through Mr. Hill's conditions, and it seemed drastic to me to hold the building permits until the completion of the intersection, especially just thinking back to Pleasant Street and the improvements to that cross street. Like, part of the goal is to do work while you have equipment in the field and you're killing two birds with one stone and that sort of thing. If the biggest hurdle, or one of the bigger hurdles that we anticipate, is DOT approval, would we be okay with allowing for building permits once the DOT approval is in? I don't know if that would go far enough to allay any of the applicant's concerns, but to me, I think that way, with a bond attached to it, so that we know we've got approval in hand, we've got an interested party in the housing authority, we've got a bond in hand to complete the work ourselves if we have to. That gets me comfortable enough, but I don't know about the rest of the board.
And I think that's something we can talk,
Okay.
I think we can talk a little bit more about that as we really start, getting into the conditions.
And that's
And we
imminently.
could also,
Yeah.
we also could come back, I mean, they could come back at some point, as I just kind of described as well. Look, hey, we're all ready to go here, but, I think we can get into that conversation a little bit more.
That's a reason, that's a reason.
That's a totally reasonable suggestion, and I think that's the kind of creativity I was encouraging, in that
Yeah.
maybe we can align our
Yep.
thinking on the condition. But I mean, to get the modification permit in place, I think, and then be able to apply for our building permit. Keep in mind, we have to go through final approval with Mass Housing as well, or through EOHLC, because it's a LIP, right? I mean, there are so many processes that are going to be happening simultaneously, as you
I
know.
understand.
So
And just to go along with what you said, just so we're all clear,
Yeah.
no occupancy permit if it's not done.
Yeah.
All right, other comments?
Just bonding companies. Just
Peter,
'cause you
up
have-
to the mic.
Just because you have a bond.
Oh, I know.
You pull the bond, it's 3 years from Tuesday before something gets done.
And we've been through it in town here, in a couple of different.
Right.
No, I understand that.
So I'm not thrilled with,
Yep.
I gotta admit, if they started working on that road and the equipment's there and they got it all tore apart, then I wouldn't mind talking about a building permit, but they have to be there.
Well, and keep in mind the timing of the comprehensive permit. 3 years and we're out if we haven't pulled the building permit on the project.
Well, we can extend it.
You can extend?
You can extend it, but the composition of the board can change, a number of things could happen, but
Extended Fisherville for what, 10 years?
We did.
12 years?
10 years.
Actually-
Was that
actually-
without a building permit?
it now.
Adams
Finally.
official.
Yeah,
Fisherville was 10.
You guys are patient.
2010.
Was it?
That was my first case.
2010.
I had just started.
20, yeah.
2010 when
2010.
the application came in, give or take a year.
So 16 years.
Well, the first 40B on that development was in the
Yeah,
80s,
being built.
Being built.
Holy moly.
never built, but it was approved in the 80s.
But in any event, there are timelines in place that would force us to really move.
Understood. All right, I'd like to spend, Jeff, if you can maybe briefly go through any real important highlight, not that everything isn't important, but don't waste our time with your fluff, no. No, I think a lot of these things get worked out between the engineers, right? But if you could kind of go through if there's any real things that we need to pay attention to tonight,
With respect to the latest
To your-
revision of the plans,
to your letter.
there's, actually, that's as clean of a letter as you probably get from me at this point. I'm good with the stormwater management, the hydrology and all that. I last saw hydrology complications back in September-ish or whatever. They're recharging a tremendous amount of water. To the best of my recollection, that open basin doesn't overflow. The point is, there's no issues with respect to hydrology. Pipe sizing calculations, a last run of hydrology based upon the last set of plans, that should come during review of the construction plans. There's no reason to look at anything else. I've got no issues with the on-site improvements whatsoever. I do want to point out to the board that I appreciate the development team giving the board statistics on parking overall, but there's 8 dwelling units that have 2 garage parking and 2 driveway parking for 4 parking spaces per dwelling unit. As far as I'm concerned, anybody in the multifamily buildings isn't gonna be able to use one of those driveway parking spaces. So I looked at the parking based upon the, what's available to the 5 large buildings and the surface and the garage spaces and all that. But even at that, it's 2.10 parking spaces per dwelling unit instead of 2.18. I'm very satisfied with the parking.
Yeah, that's,
I'm good with the on-site improvements and the plans do reflect what, during the public hearings I've been here, what's been brought forth as far as on-site improvements. Off-site improvements, we've covered everything I wanted to share with the board. I have nothing new to offer.
okay. All right, so you'll work through, whatever is there. Then I think, I think you may have been looking to go to the waivers, but I think what I want to actually do is talk through the conditions that Dan has proposed And I'll fess up and say, I haven't even had a chance, we just got this in the last
Yeah,
day or so.
I haven't
and
had
I've
a
been
chance
busy.
to see this.
So I'm gonna ask Dan to just kind of lead us through the draft, conditions, so we can make sure that
I'll let you share.
we're kind
Wanna
of,
do
we
it? Me too.
are on the same page and understanding what's going on here. So, so we're going to Dan's draft decision that we all should have had in our packet. And Dan, I'll kind of turn it over to you for, kind of lead us through what you think is salient to talk about tonight.
Okay, Katrina's just
I'm trying to-
switching the screen so I can share my screen.
But it's not giving me the option to
Uh,
let you share.
Should I go on to Zoom?
Probably. I don't know why it's, oh, that's, yeah, you have to be in Zoom for me to let you share.
I haven't done it in the past though.
I know, I don't know why it's not letting me let you share.
Alright, how do I get to Zoom? Your website?
Well, you should have gotten an email.
Oh. Right.
I sent you an email. Yeah, it's not giving me the options.
I'm glad it's not just me. Every time it happens to me, I'm like, oh, yeah.
I'm not having any problem with my computer.
Usually it says, let others share it, it's not even giving me,
Was that today, Katrina, that email?
yeah, you should have gotten one at 6 o'clock tonight, a reminder.
Who's it from?
Zoom.
Zoom,
If you go to the town website, it's the board's website.
yeah.
It's on the
you.
agenda.
But that would be as.
But that's a,
Oh, as
yeah,
a,
he gets one as a participant.
got it.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know
I'm
why.
trying
it's
to
You could
help.
let him in if you want.
Share settings, hold on.
Yeah, I got the reminder, Dan, at 5:55 tonight, so somewhere right around there.
Can somebody forward it?
I found it.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, I could do it, but I think Dan wants to
Yeah.
drive too.
He does, which is, I have no. But it's not even giving me the option to let Dan share.
Oh, there he is.
Has he joined? Is he in it?
Yeah, he's in.
And I think you wanna make sure you're muted or,
Post tools for share.
Okay,
Oh, wait, here we go.
how do I share?
All panelists. You should be able to share now.
Okay.
They moved it.
Funny how they just changed things. Zoom.
Good.
I love it.
Alright, so this template is the same template that you guys have seen for all of our projects, particularly the more recent ones. I just basically took the Upton Road decision and used that as a basis and changed the language that we need to change to make it unique to this project. So the first couple sections are really just preambles that Katrina's gonna help me fill in with dates of hearings and things like that, who we get comments from. The findings section, I've not drafted yet. This is just the language from the Upton Street project, so that'll change once the conditions are finalized. And the conditions start, on page 4. And Bill, if it's okay with you, I'll just hit the highlighted portions, because the rest of it's, I think, standard stuff that we've seen before. So condition A1 is probably the most important condition that requires the applicant to file final plans addressing all the comments and the conditions that we've raised in this document. So we acknowledge here that what they presented so far are preliminary plans. Now they have to come back to us and give us final plans that address all the comments and provide all the supplemental information that we asked for. So section A10, we need to fill in, now that we've got the final revised plans, I think they were dated March 2nd, so we can fill all this stuff in, make sure we have the full list of all the plans. Section A11, I think needs to be updated. And I know that, I think Cohen had sent us the revised statistics showing how many, you still have some 50% units, is that right?
no,
No.
Oh, you don't have any 50% units?
just say yes. No, they're not. They were only doing 80s.
Why didn't the select board require lower?
Oh, I almost got in trouble with the select board trying to get them to do that.
That was the first time we met, Bill.
Oh, I think I watched that meeting.
Okay.
I almost ran out of the room.
Oh, jeepers. I wasn't involved, so hey.
So no, it's all, it's 80, 25%
Okay,
80.
so I'll change that table to reflect what the project really is. Section B is the submission requirements. Nothing really unique here. It's basically everything that we've asked for in other projects, construction management plan, proof of permits that they need from federal and state authorities. And then we get to section C. This is site development construction conditions. And C1 is the section that deals with the off-site improvements. So it's worth just taking a minute to read what I've drafted.
Should we be specifying in paragraph A, drafted DPW director? I mean,
We don't need to. It's your call.
I mean,
would
we should,
incorporate his approval.
we should, I mean, we should obviously get his approval, but, I don't wanna end a situation where we say okay and he says no, or something like that.
What are you saying, Bill?
Well, paragraph A says, complete snow road reconstruction work to the satisfaction of the Grafton ZBA and the Grafton DPW director.
Right.
And it usually, generally in comprehensive permits, we are the ultimate decision. So, we should get his input, obviously.
Well, it's a little different because this is a public road. It's not on the site, it's off the site. And so won't this be under his jurisdiction after this is all done as a public way?
Sure.
Yeah.
But we
I-
would just withhold approval until we had his approval.
I just don't want in a situation where, well, I suppose if he wants to withhold his approval, then he withholds his approval. All right,
I
that's
mean,
fine.
we wouldn't approve it until he did anyway.
Right.
That's what.
I
Bill's
can't
saying.
imagine us or new members of the board, I can't imagine.
Yeah, okay.
If I may, I would imagine that the work along Snow Road outside the, Mass DOT right-of-way is jurisdictional to the Grafton DPW, and there would have to be some kind of permit, just like there is with Mass DOT, but that portion would be just along whatever section of Snow Road. And so the point is, that in theory, that the applicant probably needs a road opening permit or something to do the work in Snow Road that is not in the Mass DOT jurisdiction.
I just get a little nervous when I see that something has to be approved by two different entities.
Oh.
That's it, that is, but, it probably makes sense. I'm fine with that.
But if I may, just a quick question. This is still an open issue because we're still deciding whether or not
Yes.
we're gonna condition this on DOT approval or completion of the work, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure what that means, condition on DOT approval.
That the
For the curb
building,
cut. He's talking
the,
curb cut permit.
right, the building permit could issue, to Brian's suggestion.
Right, so that's really
Right.
the first language, prior to the commencement of construction activities.
Right.
So that, yeah, that might get
Right.
adjusted.
I'm just jotting down the list of open issues.
I didn't mean to, well, I did mean to interrupt you, but. I think I addressed my issue. So paragraph B actually speaks to easements. Is that the intention, or is it land I thought they were actually gonna,
It honestly, from the 30,000 foot overview, doesn't make a difference.
Yep.
As long as you have the legal right to, realign the road and do what you need to do. Whether it's an easement or a taking in fee, six one, half dozen of the other.
Yeah, I think most towns generally prefer easements when,
Right.
when they're acquiring land for roads.
okay.
And we can talk to Paul or whoever is in charge.
I had a conversation with Paul a number of months ago, and he was saying on other projects where they've needed land for, say, for a sidewalk, they've done it through
Easements.
Yeah.
And there'll be a takings plan. There'll be some temporary easements as well. There might be some grading easements. You know, all of that will be addressed accordingly.
Have you been in touch with the housing authorities council?
Their council, they claim, is EOHLC, so.
So that's
So no. The answer is no.
right.
So maybe
It was the first question I asked.
maybe we should be putting them in touch with a lawyer if they don't have one.
Yeah.
What's EOH, whatever?
It's formerly DHCD that looks over your SHI, for
Oh.
example, looks over your compliance with 40B in general. It's the quasi-state governing authority.
The Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, formerly the Department of Housing and Community Development,
So every time,
Massachusetts level, state level.
so every time they call, they might get a different lawyer answering their question.
Well, that's not even really applicable.
Yeah,
They don't do, they need, a land or real estate
Right.
attorney, not the state's attorney.
I'm happy to step in if they'll sign a conflict waiver. Hey.
Take it off our bill.
Right. It's a housing authority. They don't have money.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Through you to either Dan or the applicant's counsel. I don't know if this is one of the questions that would have been out to our town council, but would an easement need to go in front of town meeting,
Yes.
like a taking? Because,
Yes.
speaking of sidewalks, when the DPW did the work on Millbury Street, I don't remember anything having to do with that sidewalk project coming before town meeting. But there were easements all up and down.
The
Millbury
easements
Street.
were just temporary use. They didn't
Everything was in
take
the
it-
right of way?
They didn't take any land. They just, if they had to step on, because my brother had signed one of them. If they had to step on his land to make the sidewalk, that was what the basic
So
agreement
nothing
was.
permanent.
But it's basically look at it this way. It's any disposition of land, of real property, whether in fee or easement. The only thing that would be exempted from that, and I can tell you right now, DOT is not going to rely on this, is a license. You could go to a property owner and enter into a license agreement, which is revocable at will of either party. So obviously improvements aren't going to work. So yeah, an easement where the town is taking jurisdiction and control of the way, or that portion of the realignment would have to be done, acquired by town meeting.
And what I'm hearing too is a permanent easement for this versus temporary easement for construction purposes.
And we could do, it's with the housing authority. I'm probably suggesting that these are going to be friendly takings, if you will, for nominal consideration. And it sounds like everybody's on the same page to get this done. So.
It wouldn't have to be a taking, right? It just could be an easement.
I think so. I know
Well,
that
it
when
would be a taking by easement.
Yeah, I don't think it actually has to be a taking, but the town could acquire the interest that it needs for the road just by a grant of an easement by the housing authority. You could do it both ways.
But they have to accept it.
Right. You still have to have an acceptance, but it doesn't have to
Right.
be an order of taking.
Right. Either which way, it ends up at town meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's a difference
So it's
without a
also-
distinction.
Legalese.
Yep, okay. Right, so I don't have any other comments about what you've got in, C1. I mean,
Anybody else?
see if we knew what we talked about.
Quickly, it's not highlighted, but in C2, there's a reference to the town planner, which is currently vacant. So I didn't know if we wanted to say or designee or make that the DPW director instead.
Well, we have an assistant town planner.
So I was or designee,
Yeah.
just she doesn't have the title interim, does she?
You want to-
Yeah, she went to Somerville. She does have, right now she is until they have somebody come in.
Okay.
So Natalia's doing it all right now.
All right, so I'll scroll down to the next highlighted section. The hours, by the way, just use the same hours from Upton Street,
Where was that? That's C8?
C8.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
It's always a topic of conversation.
Oh, yes.
7 to
Topic of
5.
many phone calls.
Blasting.
Yeah, do you guys have any,
Are we blasting?
No.
No blasting.
does the applicant have any concerns with the hours of operation?
Materials and equipment deliveries. Oh, yeah, so but is it typical? Cleaning construction work shall not occur before 7 or after 5, Monday through Friday. Now, typically 7 to 7? Is that for?
What, and I haven't looked at this, I apologize, but what do the town bylaws prescribe? Or is there any prescription in the zoning zoning bylaw?
Our bylaws are the same as the state. I think it's 7 a.m. till either dusk or 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then Saturday 8 to 5.
And
None on Sunday, none on legal holidays.
Right.
On some of them, they say you can work on a holiday, but you have to go and get authorization.
Yeah, good luck. No. I don't
Should we
want
call
those
you?
phone calls. No, I get enough when people are showing up at 6:45 and starting equipment.
Yeah.
Or on paving day when they show up at 5:30 and unload.
Yep.
Paving days are
And
always
that's the
brutal.
one thing you really have to be very cognizant of, because we get phone calls like you would not believe, where I've had to have my building inspectors there, as Bill knows, at 6:30 in the morning watching. So we get complaints from budding neighbors. So
Sure.
I mean, your guys can't even show up until 7. Like, they can't get there early. They can't arrive until 7.
And that's what the last couple of sentences in this condition 8 are really trying to address. I think those were added because of problems we had at other sites.
Yeah.
And is that for outside work? Is that for all work?
All work.
Because if someone's, inside doing wiring and they're not,
Still.
Yeah, okay.
Because we did have that question come up for Fisherville, if they could have inside wiring, inside painting,
Right.
and
Not-
no.
The problem is delivery trucks come at like 6 or 6:30 and they're just idling outside.
Right.
And
Yeah.
people are still sleeping, they're getting ready in the mornings, so it's a real problem.
Okay.
And so obviously you guys can come back to us with comments before the next meeting.
That's the hope. I must admit, I have not even had a chance to look at
No,
this.
no, this just came out. I mean, I haven't looked at it myself,
Right,
but, and I just, like I said, I just wanted Dan to kind of take us through,
Yeah,
kind of the highlights, make sure we're all kind of on the same page.
and it's appreciated.
So open space, section D, the first couple paragraphs are the same language from Upton Street. We have the tree protection, paragraph D1, which I don't think is gonna be an issue for you guys. So D2, I probably should have highlighted that because that's actually a new provision, or it's unique. The proposed language is that there would be an open space buffer along the northerly property line to that abut the residences on Suzanne Terrace. This would have a depth of 40 feet. And what that precludes is structures, driveways, utilities within the buffer, but the drainage utilities and the grading that's in the buffer would be allowed. So you do have
We do
a
have,
lot of grading.
we have grading for that water quality swale.
But I think the garage, if I'm not mistaken, I think the garages are set back at least by 40 feet.
It's in that ballpark, but I'm not too exactly. I'm right around 40 feet, maybe just under them, but I'm not using a scale.
He's talking about
So
right here. Yeah.
if while we're talking about the garages, I just wanted to flag that I didn't really focus on this before. These garages are really close to each other. There's no space between them. And so there's two concerns with that. Number one, does the building inspector or the fire chief have anything to say about that? Because typically, our zoning bylaw requires, I think, 20 feet, 25 feet, 20 feet between buildings.
Something like that, I'd have to.
Separation
see.
between buildings. And the building inspector and the fire chief have said in the past, in past projects, that they like to see separation for access and fire protection. The other concern is that this does kind of create a wall effect when you have like these long, narrow buildings basically touching each other. So aesthetically, do we have a concern with that? Maybe not. I mean, in some respects, the line of garages on the north side actually provide a screen
And I thought that's what we
Yeah,
kind of talked
for the
about.
neighbors.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not a big deal
But
aesthetically.
was there a waiver request for the
Yeah,
distance?
the separation. Yeah.
There is.
Yes.
I did email, was it Mike Colleen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I emailed Mike today. And asked
Well,
if he had any concerns.
I think there were two bylaws. There's one that governs the primary buildings, and then there was another one
I
that,
want to,
yeah.
Somewhere that I think I saw the waiver for the space between the garages.
okay,
I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure.
It's
Yeah.
in there.
okay.
I
It is,
think
okay.
so too. Yes.
And that's for the 40 foot. It almost looks like condo number one may actually be closer than anything else to the property line.
Yeah, we broke it down by building.
So I can move on. D3 is boilerplate, D4 boilerplate, D5. Should have highlighted this. This comes out of the comment from the conservation administrator. So she wrote in recently that
Yep.
she wanted to make sure we had some language about the potential vernal pool that's, I guess, in the ILSF. Jeff, is that right, in the northeast corner?
Right, right. Yep.
So there's a belief that might be a vernal pool, in which case, I mean, this ILSF is already jurisdictional, and they're already gonna have to go before the Conservation Commission under the state act. The bylaw and the regulations do have enhanced provisions governing activity adjacent to vernal pools, and so she and the commission, I guess, want the board to protect those provisions and make sure that the vernal pool area is investigated in the spring, which is actually right now. Maybe they're already doing it. I know you guys have a wetland scientist already engaged, so that area be evaluated to see if there is in fact a certifiable vernal pool, and if there is, then the applicant then get it certified through the state. And then the town's vernal pool protection would apply to this area. What that means in practice is that they can't do any work within, I think, a certain number of feet to the vernal pool unless they get approval from the Conservation Commission. But under the state act, they just can't discharge runoff to the vernal pool, which they're not, because they're proposing the outfall 100 feet away.
Right,
So it may not even be consequential if this was a vernal pool, but
right, and we have, I forwarded that comment to our wetland scientists, and from what I understand, let me sit up so people can hear me. There is no required mechanism for, under the state or the local bylaw, for certifying vernal pools. It's a voluntary act by by a property owner. There is no provision requiring that under state or local regulations. Notwithstanding, we are treating it like it is, and that's why we pulled any of the potential point discharges outside of the buffer zone to it, but there is no provisions in the Wetlands Protection Act or the local bylaw requiring that. It's an exercise for the sake of an exercise, because we will be observing it. So
well, I think the commission can require you to investigate it as part of the state act permit, and then the commission could certify it if it in fact is a vernal pool. So it's kind of just.
So we'll have Matt take a look at it, and we may propose an alternative to it, so that we're, again, making sure that we're meeting all the regulations, but not doing something just for the sake of doing it if we're going to be we're going to be adhering to it anyway. So we don't want to just, do it for the sake of doing it. If we're going to be, making sure that we are aware of it and following the regulation, even if it is or it isn't. So, but I'll get Matt. I already forwarded her comment to Matt, and he'll give his.
Is that the wetland scientist?
Yes, Matt's Matt Morrow is our wetland scientist.
Who's he with?
He works for himself. He was a conservation agent in, I don't know.
Sterling, Dudley, I forget where else.
I think he was out. Was he a lot of places north, and then he was down in. He's been in a handful or more, and now he's pseudo retired. I think he's the chairman of the Sterling Conservation Commission now. And he's
Okay.
At any rate.
All right, and then D6, you have a no-take letter.
Do we?
So
We don't.
I think, so, again, Leah, the conservation agent, suggested that the conditions in the no-take letter be just incorporated as conditions here.
Yeah.
I think you need to go back to Mass Wildlife, though, once the final plans are finalized, because they approved your project under the set of plans that was dated July of 2025.
Right, and we did send them an updated, not full set, but showing the, obviously the work within there, and it was in line with what the previous plan was.
But
Well,
that's
the-
fine.
well,
We'll,
the
So,
new work
yeah,
will-
so we will,
we'll keep them updated. That's not
yes,
an issue.
that's fine.
Yeah, but it's important that you get a revised letter that reflects the current plan, because the current plan shows a flood lane, which wasn't there before. So that's within the buffer that was supposed to be protected, so. All right, so D7, yeah, this is the width issue. So we'll wait to hear back from the fire chief and the building department. Did you ask the building?
I did ask Tracy, but I'll ask her again.
Who is it?
Tracy.
I don't think I met her yet.
Mr. Hill, I was just wondering, is D7 really even necessary since they're going to be asking for a waiver to allow the 20 feet anyway? So we'll have it in the waivers if we don't have it here? I mean, it doesn't hurt, it's just duplicative. Because the bylaw requires 30 feet, so they've got 25 feet between two sets of buildings.
Yeah.
And 20 feet between two other sets.
Yeah, I suppose you're right, because they have to build what's shown in the plans, and the plans show deviations, so. That's a good point.
And they have to build what the bylaw says they can build, or they have to ask for the waiver.
Right.
Is there a difference between primary buildings and accessory buildings? I consider the garages accessory buildings.
So
They're
that,
not inhabited, so I'm not sure if,
the bylaw that the waiver is requesting, is under multifamily dwelling requirements. And it says, if there's more than one such structure on a lot of record, there shall be at least 30 feet between each such structure. So right now, the waiver request asks for a waiver for 5 feet between the garages. But I had a note saying I didn't even know if that was necessary, because it sounds like they're just talking about the residential structures in the bylaw. But I'll defer to the lawyers.
was my recollection of section 5 of the zoning bylaw.
It was primary
Multifamily.
structures.
I'm sorry?
You're saying it was primary structures?
I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but to me, there's a difference between inhabited buildings,
Right.
people sleeping in garages.
And, yeah, a bicycle. Yeah.
But I'm not the building inspector of the fire chief.
Oh, here it is.
Is there a law that says how many garages you can have in one building? I mean, why aren't they all hooked together?
5 feet between.
To the best of my knowledge, Peter, there's nothing, and then you graft in the regulations that say minimum, and maximum number of vehicles in the garage.
Why are they separated?
Why are they separated?
Yeah, 6 each. Why are they separated? Why isn't it just one continuous garage?
Long way to walk around.
Yeah.
Walk around to work.
There is a, and I don't know if this triggers it, but there is a bylaw requirement that you have a building that's no longer than like 140 something feet?
No, we're not.
Right.
We're not triggering that?
No.
Okay.
But Peter, practically, you can get a fire, you squirt a fire hose between the buildings if one of them's on fire.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Massing.
No,
Break
just-
it
And
up,
you break
break it
up
up
the
a little,
mass.
break it up a little bit.
But 5 feet isn't much. I mean, that's,
you get a good view from the apartments in between the buildings. That's where somebody's gonna store their bicycle.
okay.
All right, so, section D9, says that before the, project gets its last occupancy permit for the building, the, applicant has to complete all the improvements located in the site, landscape improvements, so that's the landscaping plan, that's been attached.
It's right here. L1.
L1, L2.
Yep.
L1, yeah, so this is the same, provision that we put in for Upton Place, that we said before the last building is completed, they have to finish the landscaping.
You had already pulled it up. It's right here. Oh, okay. No, okay.
Condition D11
That's what was received.
is saying that the land that's within the 200-foot setback area shall remain in its natural state, except for the utilities that are shown in the area, which are, of course, the infiltration basin and then the fire lane. I made a note here that in the past, we've, I think, required signage to that effect. I think actually for your project, maybe, Peter. Whenever we have open space, sometimes we require signage to alert the public that this is open space and not open to the public. That might be important here, given that this is a zone 1 and we don't really want people thinking they can go back there and throw their garbage or paint cans or something like that.
Walk their dogs down into the Grafton,
right.
Grafton Water District, no, seriously, walk.
That's a steep slope. Good luck.
Well, not behind building 2.
Oh, there is a flat spot there, then it drops off. You're right.
Once you get onto the Water District property, it drops off. pretty
Yeah, you're right. No.
All right, so moving down to D12.
Can I ask on D10, the snow storage, I know, Jeff said there was room by the dog park to put snow. I don't see that happening myself with 2 bad storms this winter. I don't see him jumping a sidewalk and piling dirty snow on a lawn, but if they want to, that's fine. I'm just wondering, do we even think about putting a condition on trucks hauling snow out?
Requiring it or prohibiting it?
I mean, it adds traffic, it adds everything to that intersection. I mean, to me, there's not much area to put snow except to pile it on sidewalks with all these parking areas. And another thing, do we want to think about limiting salt use? Because everybody is using pure salt now, no sand, so they don't have to sweep. And calcium chloride, liquid, salt, all kinds of chemicals. It's just, do we consider that?
I'd leave it to the board.
I mean, and it's a hard decision because when somebody falls, I don't want somebody calling me saying you didn't let us use salt.
Were there any conditions along those lines at Pleasant Street? Because that was a zone 2 as well, wasn't it?
It was a zone 2, but it was much
was-
removed
yeah.
from the wells compared to the proximity to the wells for this.
I can look.
Phosphorus, but not,
I'm sorry.
didn't we limit phosphorus?
Yeah, something like that.
Fertilizer, yeah, probably.
But I don't think there was anything salt related.
I don't see how we could put an amount of salt. It's,
Yeah, they're driven by economics. They want to use as little as possible, but on the other hand, they've got to use enough to make sure it's safe.
right.
Satisfy safety of the persons and their insurance company.
But this is a zone 1, so.
On the edge of a zone 1, absolutely.
But the water district didn't request anything like that, so.
The water district didn't really weigh in, so.
Well, Peter, to your point of limiting truck hauling snow out, that doesn't feel good to me. I don't want to get in a situation where, they can't get rid of the snow.
No, I know, they're gonna end up, to me, they're gonna end up hauling it up.
Yeah, that just doesn't.
I mean,
feel-
little storms, no, but when you get 2 feet, yeah, there's no place to put it.
Yeah,
Do we limit hours? I guess, I mean,
I mean, are they still bound by the construction plan?
no,
For snow removal?
it's a tough,
Oh.
it's a tough thing.
But they'd be bound by the town bylaws, the general noise bylaws for,
Yeah, but during
like
snow
hard equipment and
removal,
stuff
I
like that.
mean, the plows are out 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this year in the middle of the storm, they heard an all call for a fire call and went and plowed the street and the driveway so the fire trucks could get in.
that's
So,
plowing, they're probably not gonna be removing snow at four,
well, them,
4 a.m.
probably not.
but even still,
but-
you get a couple of big storms, so you're gonna have a loader and some dump trucks. They're gonna get them in there, whatever time they can get the loaders and the dump trucks in there.
Sometimes, yeah.
you
Which
know?
is oftentimes for a place like this when the people are at work.
I mean, that could be the case, but it also could be the case that, the only time we can get the contractor is, at midnight, cause he's too busy clearing these other places. Yeah, I just don't feel good about any of those sorts of restrictions. I think if if they're in a situation where they need to get rid of snow, they need to get rid of snow.
Right.
It's probably helpful too, right? Getting rid of the snow.
Fertilizers
Yeah.
will be used in accordance with special condition 33 of the Conservation Commission's order.
And it's definitely in the interests of the
So I-
applicant and the management company to clear the site, make sure people can park.
Right.
I can find language. I'm sure I have language somewhere in a decision that deals with salt use on roads. All right,
Okay, no, that's,
good point. So, D12 talks about the MOU that was signed with the select board. It's basically incorporating your obligations in from that.
Mr. Chair, just on that one, the only part of the requirements on the applicant that aren't detailed in the plans are the $300,000 donation to the town. So I didn't know if that would be worth calling out, because everything else is going to be reflected in the plans, especially including the offsite improvements. But that won't. So I didn't know if we wanted to spell that out explicitly.
That would imply that we didn't call it out explicitly for, Upton or, Pleasant. Cause they have the same donation and, you wouldn't have removed it from the decision you're copying.
Yeah, I think this is how we handled it for the other projects. Leaving it just more broad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And if the
It's covered.
MOU ever, or the agreement ever changes, you don't wanna have a conditions that's not consistent with the changed agreement.
All right. The next one, I just threw this in here because sort of struck me that, do we really want these two garages right next to the zone one? My concern is that these garages might get used for some other nefarious purpose that might not be great for the zone one. And I guess the question is, do you really need all these? Like, right, you already have more than 2 spaces per unit. And if you are gonna keep these, I think it might make sense to put a condition that restricts the use of these garages just for vehicle parking and nothing else. At one point, this is where the maintenance facility is gonna be. So where's that actually?
We got rid of that.
It's under the park.
Oh, yeah, in terms of garages, we got rid of that, and they're gonna have that in the, I think, in building 1, is that correct, Colin?
In the parking garage?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So,
We don't want to eliminate parking.
Well, I assume if those garages did go away, it would just convert to open space parking,
Right.
or surface
Are
parking.
we talking about these?
it's funny, most developers don't want parking. You wanna keep it all.
Well, I
Well,
mean,
it's a good-
the density reduction The increased parking ratio is a function of density reduction and the fact that we added, so we're happy. I mean, as far as the parking absorption,
It's a nice amenity.
we're overparked on this plan. There's no question about it.
I can see these garages becoming, or at least one of these becoming storage for landscape equipment and things along those lines. And I know you guys are likely to say no, that won't happen, but, you know.
We had it as it was a different structure. It was a bigger, deeper structure. So if they had, say,
Yep.
a dump truck with a plow on it, they could get that in there and still have room to, also have, whether sinks, faucets, things that, toilets, things that break, so that they have them,
Well,
storage of
I
those.
believe
So-
that stuff's gonna be stored in building one, as you said.
That is, everything will be, so, but right now, they're practical, obviously, for, a car. It's not practical for, meaningful storage of anything else. And again, the reason they're on there is, the experience is that it's another added quote-unquote amenity that people, they wanna have a car, they wanna keep it inside, they wanna keep it out of the weather, they wanna park it in the garage. It's worth a few extra bucks to rent a garage space.
If I may, Colin Babcock through the chair. The reason we added those garages to the side there, if you look at the plan, the 24-unit building in the quad had garages directly across from it, which would be an amenity and service to that particular building. And you have the garage under for building 1. And with building 2, there weren't any garages within the proximity of that building. So we put a garage there so there wasn't an amenity that would be provided for that particular building.
So the bottom line, are we okay with the restriction
Absolutely.
for car parking? No problem.
Yeah, restricted.
We've spent too much time on that one. Yeah,
So I mean,
we're fine
you've
with
added
it.
the amenity for 8 out of the 60 units.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing that's on my mind is the fire that they had in Northborough Avalon, right? And
Oh.
that was in a garage, and it was landscape equipment, is my understanding, is those garage units that caught fire were,
So,
that sort of thing. So I can just see where that's what happens, right? The landscaper,
Okay,
I'll give you a bit of a break in price if I can store stuff in a couple of these units, and,
Oh, okay. No, I misread it. Yeah, for cars only, you're not gonna.
Yeah, no, we're fine
that's
with the
fine.
condition.
Oh, that's fine.
We're fine with the condition.
Yeah.
I mean, does the board want
it's
to
not
modify
a
the?
condition we can enforce, though. So,
I mean, we can make sure it's in our management agreement with the property manager, that type of thing. I mean,
Yeah, I know, like for some storage facilities, not that they say, you can't store flammables, you can't store this, you can't store that.
and of course, it's not.
I mean,
Well, yeah, then they'll say, oh, if you do, they kick you out.
And I'm not concerned about the garage catching fire, and I don't want to say that flippantly. We're more concerned about whatever's being stored there and
Yeah.
impacting the
Causing
well.
a problem.
Right.
I mean,
so
how
that's
deep
that's
is
kind
it?
of the issue.
But most likely,
like 22
there's gonna be
feet deep.
Yeah,
tenants
it's
in that
22.
building, you're gonna be paying extra to put cars in there. There's gonna be cars in there.
I don't think anybody's gonna pay
It's-
a lot extra so that
They're
they
all
can,
22.
No, it's-
store gas cans in.
That wasn't, my concern was not that, it was that they wouldn't rent them out and they would use the store.
oh, yeah, no.
Personal
It's right
for
next,
them.
it's right
Gotcha.
next to the trash compactor,
Gotcha.
so I don't know, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like,
You're right.
I'm
No,
just
they,
hypothesizing that
Yeah.
if they need oil for the compactor, they'll put the oil in the bay or something,
No.
Yeah, okay.
So,
We're-
so the
we're-
option is,
Yeah.
do you like the language that's drafted, or do you wanna get rid of the garages altogether?
You know what, as I think about it, I think Kay's got a great point. In the fact that there's only 8 garages available to those 60 units, I think they're gonna be used for garages, for parking cars. I think there's gonna be demand, and I can see them using maybe garage number 7, which is on the other side of the trash compactor. If there was a garage to be used for storage, it would be maybe that one more so than the ones in that corner. I think we just put the condition on,
okay.
and that's my thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're fine with it. check.
Wait a minute, though. The rest of that condition, not to beat a dead horse, but shouldn't that condition just apply to all the garages about storage of hazardous materials?
That's an excellent point.
Hazardous, yeah.
But I think to Mr. McCusker's point, how does it ever get enforced?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean,
True.
Cohen was just saying for
Could be
insurance.
enforced if someone calls up and says, hey, there's gas in this garage.
Right.
Yeah.
Then we go enforce it. Without the condition, we don't have the ability to enforce it. So-
I mean, ultimately, if there was a complaint, it's up to the building inspector to come in and.
But, so I agree with Brian's point. It's, you know, it's not the two garage buildings, it's all.
All of them.
Right.
We're fine.
We're fine with that.
We're fine with all of them being restricted.
Okay.
I mean, Cohen just mentioned that it's going to be a requirement of our insurance in any event.
That makes sense.
So
Okay. The-
imminently practical.
But just we may be getting into the weeds here, but I guess that's where we are. It's not, it's not necessarily automobiles, right? I mean, can I park my motorcycle in there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I put my boat?
As long as it's not too big.
Can we just say
13-foot
no
Boston
storage
Whale.
of the
Yeah, there you
problematic
go.
issues? 'Cause,
Something like that.
I mean, I lived in an apartment complex in Quincy, and I rented out a unit, and it was just for storage. I didn't park there, so.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Okay.
Wait, so we're okay with people using these spaces for storage and not car parking?
No.
Well, I think originally we talked about discounting the number of garages in the parking calculation because we thought some number of them, up to 50% of them, I think we talked about this at one point, could be used for something other than a car.
Right.
So yeah,
That's not our preference. We want people to be parking in these garages.
Yeah.
So shouldn't it say the garage buildings on the site shall be used for tenant parking?
Yeah. Something like that.
With the
It's not
restriction.
strictly automobiles. I think it's be fine to put your motorcycle in there.
Any mode of transportation is all right, Bill?
I don't know. But I like what
Airplanes won't
Dan
fit.
just said.
DeLorean?
You put mode of transportation, my wife will have a horse in there.
That's true.
So if I use it for storage, but at least include a bike, I'm good.
Right.
Well, yeah, it's.
If I can, I think we're okay with the hazardous materials. I don't know if we include just storage, because somebody could be storing clothes in there, right? And if that's what someone wants to rent it for, that's their prerogative. We do have enough parking to support without the garages. We did that, like you said, we did that exercise. We're at 2.1 here, totally. So I don't know if we'd want to restrict all the garages. Let's face it, we want to rent them all out, but if there's one or two or three or four people who may want them for, like you said, you had a garage and you put your clothes in it or something to that nature, I think we'd want to allow them to do that.
These are individual walls between each.
Correct, and they're drywalled.
I mean, it must be fireproof.
Correct, they have to be, yes.
I don't see how,
Yeah, I don't either.
if we start putting conditions
Yeah.
that somebody can't
Yep.
put two suitcases in there with their
Right.
car, I mean, that isn't the car.
Well, no, that's different. I think what we're saying is they can't be used exclusively for storage. And I'm pretty sure we dealt with this in another project where where the parking was tighter. Didn't we have a project where we were actually concerned about the required number of parking and there were all these garages? And I think we put condition, I think we put language in the decision that they had to be used for parking and nothing else.
I don't necessarily remember that. I know like at Craftsman, I think we were concerned. That's the one down at South Grafton. But those were all townhouses. And you know, I think the concern was without any sort of basement that the garages in the townhouses would become essentially their attics or their basements and storage.
Right.
I think this is a little different situation.
And I think we went through this exercise already where we added 2 more spaces to each townhome for that purpose, because we talked about possible storage in the townhomes. And then we also, as we reduced density, we did reduce parking to get the number up so we could hedge against that.
seems like it should just, we want to have some language about storing hazardous materials, that sort of stuff. Like you said, your insurance is going to require it anyways.
Correct, and we wouldn't want it in there ourselves.
I think if people are storing junk in there, if it smells, they're gonna take care of the problem.
Yeah.
We do have language in our rental agreements. There are certain things you can do in there. We actually had one of our properties recently. They were running a call center out of one of the garages. Okay.
Wow.
I was there myself, and I walked by, and they had the garage door open, and I looked, and they had like 6 chairs set up in a U. Everybody had headphones on, and I couldn't believe it.
Really?
Yeah.
Who didn't close the door?
Yep. So yeah, that was the end of that.
Hot day.
I think I think it's like salt, we leave it alone.
Well, Saul, I
Just
think
be
we're.
aware, there's a possibility that none of these garages will be occupied by cars, that they'll all be storage units, and if
That's
okay.
definitely not going to happen. I hope not.
Well, how do you know?
Well,
People are paying you $200 a month to rent these things. You're not gonna, if you don't say.
well, because the fact of the matter is, people who drive don't want to clean snow off their car, and that's why they pay $200 to rent the garage for the
A lot
most
of
part.
people rent storage units. I'm
For
just
the most
saying,
part.
I don't know.
But a storage unit behind Koopman is a lot less than $200 a month.
That said,
get into
we do have storage units in the garage under as well. The garage under has lots of storage units in it that will be for rent for storage.
And how would we enforce it anyways, even if we knew it was full of junk?
How do
You'd
we
have to
enforce
walk
half
by.
of these conditions?
Yeah.
It's all,
No, but we can. If we have to, we can.
we rely on
So-
good faith, and we have building inspectors and fire chiefs and police officers, and if we need to, we enforce things. But
Yeah.
But it's the people living in this development that if they don't like what their neighbor's doing in the garage, I would think they would call management and say,
Correct.
something's going on there, we don't like it, so
Which
I
happens
don't know,
from
it's
time to
up
time.
them to control.
centers.
You know, I don't.
It was
I don't know.
unbelievable.
band rehearsals.
I walked back by and recorded it quickly, and I sent it to our manager. I'm like, check this out.
So, I don't know.
So how many parking spots are there total?
404, I believe, for the multifamilies, plus the other 32 for the townhouses.
Yeah, I don't count the townhouses.
Yep, so
So 404, and that includes 58 garage spaces.
We have 54 detached garages.
54 garage spaces is correct. Surface spaces, 296. And I forget
Plus
the number in
the
building one.
50,
That's
53.
53.
We have 297.
So that's 350 spots between the subsurface and the surface. 350. We have 200
I agree,
units.
I agree. Plus
Yes.
another 53.
And then the detached garages is 54. We're not going to talk about townhouses, so
That's only 32 spaces.
yeah, that's 32. So
So for 192 units, you have 350 spaces
have
without the
293.
detached garages.
297 plus 53
Correct.
plus 54.
350. That's 404. Is that right?
404 is the total number of parking spaces available to the
With the
five
with the
multifamily
with the detached garages.
with the
13.
detached garages.
350. It's 350 without the garages. Detached garages. It's 404 with
Well,
the garage.
I agree.
Right.
50 without the detached garages.
So that's 1.7. So even if none of the garages are used to put cars, that's 1.75.
Which that number is what we have pretty much across the board at all of our properties, 1.75.
And I don't remember now. Is that the number we ended up with at Prentice?
I think so.
Bill,
I think it is.
it's 350 spaces for 192 units.
Oh, it's actually
Oh,
higher.
I'm sorry,
than
you're
that.
right.
I did 200.
192. So we're
Yeah, I-
192.
Yeah,
You
so-
take the townhouses
so
out,
we're
so
four.
it's-
Yeah, so the number's even higher.
it's
Right.
1.8 something, I think.
Which
Yeah,
is
so we're up around 1.8.
Totally
So
fine.
even if,
1.83.
I think we're
which is why we did that
You're
for the
fine on
initial
parking. I'm
conversation.
very comfortable with the parking ratio, and back to Peter's concern about snow removal, it gives them the opportunity to stack snow on the corner parking spaces way away from the building entrances and
And to that point, recently we had a really bad winter, and some of our properties that didn't have those extra spaces, we had to do a lot of trucking off-site, and the ones that did have the extra spaces, we had some room for storage, and we did less trucking. So
And I think that's
a good
actually
point.
an argument to keep the garages next to the water district property, because if those were just open surface parking.
Good point.
That would be a prime
that-
place
that-
to
that's
dump
all-
snow, and we don't want snow there.
Good point.
Right.
So I think D12, is it D12? Whatever one we were talking about.
D13.
D13 becomes just maybe something about hazardous.
Yeah, I just made the change.
Okay, all right.
All right, and we have the trash compactor next door. So during the staff meeting that we had back in November, we had a discussion about this with Paul, and there was some concern about liquid waste basically running off and getting into the water district property. And a way to control that is just to making sure the design of the pad is well designed so that it's capturing all runoff. So in case there's any liquid waste coming out of the compactor or out of the dumpsters, which happens, that would fall onto a concrete pad that would be drained to a tank, so it wouldn't ever escape. I don't know enough about this, so I just draft the condition that they have to design this and then give it to the DPW director and the health director for review and approval. Paul said something about grooving the concrete pad, I guess, to create channels.
Sure, it would be like what you see around the concrete pad at fuel dispensers when you get gasoline. They're called positive limiting barriers or something like that. Those grooves is meant to capture a certain amount of gasoline, the de minimis spills, if you will, or a very small spill. It's not, you can't stand there and keep the thing flowing, but the kind of things that might be drippings and things like that to come out. Yeah.
And don't forget, these are self-contained. We talked about
Right.
these are self-contained units. You're not, pulling it off of the whole unit is enclosed,
Yep.
and that whole unit comes off. So there's no drippage and spillage associated.
We hope.
The compactor, but what about the recycling bins?
The recycling bins are just traditional dumpsters.
Recycling just traditional.
Yeah, so if somebody
So we
tosses a plastic jug with something in it in the recycling bin.
Yeah.
But those aren't even in this location, right? This is over the trash.
They're next to the trash compactor.
Oh, I thought those were dumpsters.
Well, the recycling bins, I believe they are.
They are.
Jeff, how do you keep rain out of the detention tank?
The detention tank,
So this thing's talking about
oh, there's
collection
some,
area going into a tank. How do you keep rain out of it?
I see this, the liquid holding tank on the compactor is something that's a tank under there that's gonna get the spills, but it's not gonna let the rain.
What's it built right into the compactor? Or?
Cohen knows more about it.
Oh, I've never heard of it. So
Nor had I
So
before
like,
this
to
project.
John's point, it's a self-contained compactor, so it's one whole unit.
yeah,
And it does have a drain on it, but the drain is plugged, and what the drain is for, they take the whole unit, they bring it back to the facility, and before they tip it, they drain it, so we're not paying for liquids. And then and it gets drained at the facility when they're tipping it, and then comes back. So it's not open to the air when it's in its place. Obviously, we would want it to be, because if it's dripping on the ground, it's going to smell, it's going to cause a problem for us. And then, to your point, I don't think you could do a tank. You could do some sort of containment where if there was a spill, it would show, it could contain it to a degree, like you said, a small amount. But I agree, there can't be a tank, because it would just fill up with water and overflow, and it would make your problem worse.
Detention tank out of the language.
I agree, because that just wouldn't work.
So how do you control? First of all, what's next to, I'm still confused about what's next to the compactor. There was, the label on the plan says dumpsters, 2 dumpsters.
Those are the recycle. So those are for recycle, cardboard and
Recycling
plastics and
dumpsters.
recycle, correct.
So where's the trash go?
Trash goes into the compactor. Those are recycle only.
Compact is the long.
So the compactor is not, I've seen compactors with bins get attached to them. That's not this?
No,
Okay.
no, we have recycle is separate, and then a
So the
compactor for
resident
trash.
comes to the compactor and lifts like a lid?
No, there's a slide door. So on both sides, I think it can be 3-sided. So it's just a door that slides open, and you throw the trash in.
Okay.
And that box, so that whole box, including the head, the whole thing, the whole unit comes out, motors and all. They disconnect the hydraulic cables and take the whole thing away.
All right, I misunderstood. I was
Yeah.
concerned that there would be transfer of garbage from.
No,
to
no.
and in the process you'd lose.
Not even during tipping.
All right.
But I think that's the case for the dumpsters, though, even for recycling. Right?
But that's not likely to be.
Right.
Wait,
It's
that's not gonna be.
It's not waste, it's just recycled cardboard, glass, aluminum.
Nothing,
Whatever people don't rinse out. Some people are good about rinsing, some aren't, and I know E.L. Harvey, even with the municipality, was complaining to him that they weren't gonna stop accepting recyclables if the town continued to allow so much contaminated recyclable waste into the waste stream. I'll remind everyone too, the grading is such around the dumpsters that the water flows not down toward, stormwater doesn't flow down toward the Grafton Water District property, but instead goes into the drainage system and then goes all the way up to the north end and then eventually would be infiltrated. The point being is that any spills that come out of the trash compactor or the recycling bins are gonna go across the pavement, be visual, before they even get to the catch basin. But if there was so much liquid spilled that it got into the catch basin, it would be into a hooded catch basin for what that's worth, and into the drainage system through those stormwater BMPs we talked about, the 4 bays and all that. But what I like about it is any runoff from the compactor and recycling bins area goes across pavement. That's the big visual to me about the management company seeing a problem and cleaning it up before they've got complaints from residents or the town intervenes.
And to your point, I think that's the most practical way to manage all of it.
And just to be clear, this is the only trash and recycling area for all 200 units.
Correct.
You're not concerned that that's not enough room for 200 units?
Nope, I went round and round and round. I've been in contact with the provider. And I can't remember the exact numbers, but I believe recycle gets picked up twice a week and trash gets picked up bi-weekly. So that compactor will service that all 200 units on a bi-weekly pickup every 14 or I think every 13 days.
And then they said during the holidays might add.
Yeah, there could be some increased intervals. We do that with dumpsters now. We know that during the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, we up the interval. So it might be once a week at that point.
I just know how much cardboard is generated by a house
That's how many toys you gotta buy.
on a given day.
Amazon.
Exactly.
Okay. So I'll adjust condition 14, 15. So 15 is a condition that came out of a comment letter from Tech. Their last comment letter had just raised the concern that the visitor parking spaces that are, maybe, I don't know, I'm controlling this, right?
Yes, you are. I mean, I can.
The
share.
delivery parking
The
spaces.
delivery
then?
parking spaces are no bigger than the regular parking spaces, and the concern was that what if you get larger trucks like UPS or post office and et cetera? It'd be better if these spaces were bigger and wider and deeper. Otherwise, trucks that are bigger that don't fit in these spaces will either stick out, or the driver might be motivated to park, like to double park in the travel lane, or park in front of the clubhouse. And this is really the worst place to be double parking, because that's the only entrance and exit to the project. And there's just a lot of congestion in that area. So the recommendation was to make these delivery spaces bigger,
Can we? Can we eliminate
or
a couple
at least a couple of them, so that you'd at least have 1 or 2 spaces where trucks can park.
I know one of the discussions was we're in the back buildings, because we do have a package room in the clubhouse that's going to service the quad area, and then the back buildings have their own dedicated delivery area. And I thought there was some discussion, in the middle, in the front door, you have that driving aisle that's kind of straight across from the front door, which that's, parking spaces are 18 feet wide, so you get 36 feet.
Where are you talking?
In front of the back buildings?
I'm talking about the clubhouse.
Oh, okay.
I'm only talking about the clubhouse area.
Okay.
Because that is a congested intersection. So the Tech was saying we don't really want
trucks double parking or not fitting in these areas when they're dropping off packages.
It just looks awkward, is my, could we swerve it in and swerve those in and make those a little bit deeper, then it makes the sidewalk awkward, it just starts making everything awkward.
Rather than applying it as a condition to the actual permit, can we just kind of keep it as an open issue and figure it out? I mean, we definitely see what you're talking about.
We don't have to figure it out tonight. I'm just.
No, I know
I just
that.
put the language in here because
Right.
it was flagged by tech and.
Right.
It is
Right.
something
I know that we
discussed.
did flag it as restricting, we had 10-minute, parking for pickups and deliveries, et cetera, and we had those 5 spaces
Well, yeah,
in there.
you used to have parking right in front of it, and then the comment was get rid of that parking, which you did.
Yeah,
But the remaining issue is just the adequacy of that area.
I don't know.
I mean, you already have the 10-minute limited parking, that doesn't seem to be
Right.
the issue, it's the size of the space.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
Amazon comes, they pull in, they do whatever they do, and they pull out. They're there for a couple of minutes. I don't think it's gonna cause.
I think the reality is, just watching away, UPS or Amazon, FedEx, none of them are gonna park.
They just pull up.
They're
They're
gonna
gonna
pull
do
up.
what they do.
Easiest
They're gonna,
place.
they're gonna rip up to the front door, do what they do, and they're gonna rip out.
If I may
Within
offer
speed
a
limits.
couple of things. First of all, during the heavy snow in Worcester, they stop in the middle of the street.
Yeah,
A
they do.
line on either side,
Right.
They do,
and a vocal one.
it's true. Cheapers.
Something about sharing the road with everybody. It wasn't just his.
Yeah.
Anyways, food for thought. As far with respect to if it's a condition, it can be dealt with between now and when construction plans come forward. But John, to your point, you're saying it's awkward. Perhaps, but perhaps not. There's 5 delivery spaces in front of the clubhouse. If the sidewalk shifted away from the parking spaces all along the front of the clubhouse, whatever distance you needed to make the spaces longer, and if you needed to make the delivery spaces a little wider,
You know what?
you could do that and perhaps
This.
lose a space on either side if worse came to worse.
This.
And I think it would be aesthetically pleasing insofar as it would be more or less symmetrical left to right of the building
Right.
versus cannibalizing it,
The delivery spaces, whatever that.
protrude into
Then that
toward
would
the sidewalk.
produce, and then the sidewalk would run up against
Sure.
the face of.
Yep.
Yeah.
And sidewalks that have a little curve to them sometimes
Right.
look nice compared to the
And we'd have a little
45s and
landscape
90s.
area in front of those
Yeah.
spots.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely
Right.
room to
Yeah.
play with in front of the space,
Okay.
right?
What is the 150-foot wide area between the two crosswalks? Like,
A radius equals 150 feet.
Yeah.
R equals 150 feet.
yeah, but is that,
Yeah.
so that blocked out area there?
No, that's just landscape area.
What is
and
this?
Green
So-
space in front of the.
Could, I know we talked about not wanting to do something right in front, but if that's not open anyway, you can't drive there now. What if
Pull it off. Like,
What if you had that as kind of like a pull-off area and had that as a delivery space you could pull into from one lane of the boulevard entrance,
Like that?
pull over there, and then pull out in the other lane?
have it be like.
I don't think you want that.
That does make sense.
Yeah.
It does make sense.
No, and that would make an awkward turn.
Yeah.
Anyways, if they're pulling in and then trying to
Yeah.
peel in front of the
Yeah.
clubhouse.
They won't
No,
be
it's-
able to make a smooth turn in
No.
or a smooth turn out, so it'd be pull up, back in a little bit.
It would-
But it is, once they're parked, it is a great space.
They just gotta get there. We can fool around with the sidewalk in front, and then, like you
Yeah.
said, meander it over a little bit, and then allow for a little bit deeper area for drop, whatever delivery or that they're not gonna use.
They're not gonna use.
But it'll look nice.
But again,
You did your job.
rather than have it as a condition, do you want to have it as an open item? And we'll address.
Well, you're gonna come
plans?
back in a few weeks anyway, so just.
Right, we'll fool around.
All the conditions are open items, some,
Right, sure.
All right.
Good point.
Keep going?
yeah, please.
So we can skip over E. Actually, E8, I put in a sentence, I can't remember where this came from. We said 2 parking spaces shall be made available per affordable unit at no charge to the tenant. I don't know if that was something from Upton.
No, I
Did we
think,
talk about that here?
no, I think that was, you were bringing it up about in the underground garage, if there's affordables in that building.
Only in building 1?
I think that's what it was. I could look past through minutes, but I think that's what you guys were discussing, because the underground parking was an additional fee. And if there were affordables in that building, how can they pay for it? And I think that's what that was for.
Okay, that's not what this says, but maybe I can,
I'll
that's
look
what the board
back.
wants.
But there's not enough.
So what can I speak to that? That's probably not feasible, because at the end of the day, that amenity costs $1.5 million, and
Right.
it's a break even. So the rents that we get for those parking spaces, we're not making any money on it, just covering that debt service to do that parking garage.
I could be wrong, but I thought that's,
But there's 53 spaces for 60 units, so some units are not gonna get spaces market rate or not.
Correct. And the units that do have them will be baked into the rent.
There is parking spaces outside, and those aren't gonna be charged.
Correct.
Yeah,
I don't feel strongly about this, but I can't remember why I put it in here. So,
The only way I look at it is if we had a parking ratio of like 1.7 to 1.8 spaces per dwelling unit, and they want to make sure there was enough, 2 spaces per, because the zoning bylaw calls for 2.25. That might have been a purpose of the condition, and now that there are 2.1 spaces per unit, it's pretty moot. There's plenty of surface spacing.
How do they even make that happen? I mean,
I think they would
it's
just
not,
have to-
you're not gonna have assigned spaces.
Right.
Right.
Short of assigning, you're not gonna make it happen.
if someone comes with 3 cars, there's nothing prohibiting them from having 3 cars, right?
No.
I mean, you can manipulate
That's-
manipulate it in your rental
Well,
agreement according to bedroom.
I've done
you know.
pretty extensive study on parking.
Yeah.
Throughout the process we started building years ago, and you have some that work and some that might be tight, and I studied a whole bunch of different developments, ours, others, and what I came to was the bedroom count more so drives
Exactly.
the parking. And so we came up with a ratio. I looked at this broad spectrum of properties, and they all and then right down the line there was 20 properties, and it was 1.2, 1.18, 1.17, 1.22. So what 1.2 per bedroom seems to be the number.
You don't mean that. 1.2 per bedroom?
Per bedroom.
Correct.
If you do 2 bedrooms, that's 2.
Not units,
unit.
bedroom.
Yeah.
Because if you look at a 3-bedroom, they could have 3 cars.
I mean, that's
2-bedroom could have 2 cars. A 1-bedroom, you know, one and a
It
half.
seems like that's gonna,
that's the
That
sweet spot.
right. That per bedroom number is much more accurate than per unit, because if you had all 3 bedrooms, you're going to need more parking.
That's the sweet spot.
The Institute of Transportation Engineers Parking Generation Manual just had a change in the last edition, and it's tied more so to the number of bedrooms, and I think studio and 1
Yeah.
bedroom is one category, and 2 and 3 bedrooms, or 2 or more is another one. So they're similar to what Cohen's finding, and I don't disagree at all that it's
Right.
not just dwelling unit count, but bedrooms play
Yeah.
into it as well.
well, I'm not seeing a reason for this. I'm not seeing that it accomplishes anything. Maybe even becomes problematic.
Yeah, I'll take it out.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, right before that, E7F speaks to the same parking garage terms that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, right. So this came from this must have come from Upton.
Yeah.
yeah.
So, do you want to take it out?
I can get it.
So just
I
what do you got? take out the townhouses? Oh, it's only 8. Yeah.
So we segregated those.
No, what's the bedroom count? Without them, it's only 8. It's 8. Try to be 42 minus 8.
East End?
It should be 16. Those are twos.
No. What's the total bedroom count without the townhouses? It's 8.
Yeah, there's enough then.
Oh, wait a minute. No, I can't.
I don't know that we should have that. I mean, you know, if somebody wants to,
2 bedrooms, so we gotta add 2 total bedrooms, it's 342.
I know.
somebody wants to park their Ferrari in there for the winter, who cares?
This is underneath?
No, I think it's any of them. The garages.
How about underneath building 1?
Yes.
I mean, this is talking about garage bay, so I assume it's the garages.
But
even
I don't
underneath.
think it would
What's
matter.
the bedroom count without them?
I'm assuming this condition was in the prior decisions
Yeah.
because there was a parking crunch.
Right.
That's the
So
unit count. That's why.
This comes from.
Yeah,
the last
comes from,
one.
I think that can
Get
come
to
out.
where I'm trying to get to.
I think it can come out.
That's 9, you'd have to multiply this is by 1, and
Yeah.
that's by 2, and then that's by 3.
And this is 2 and 3. So
2, 3, those are the townhouses.
you
so
have to
forget
go
about
back
that.
to. No, I'm trying to subtract the townhouses from the total
But I can
bedroom
do,
count.
but I can.
I agree. We were dealing with a parking shortage.
Yeah, we were, absolutely were.
Didn't those just barely get to 2 parking spots per,
I think it was below
per unit?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it got to 2,
Yeah, I don't
but maybe they did.
29.
It's a question, what is this
318.
impeding?
Jiffy.
Sorry. What is this impeding a person from doing? What's the downside of putting this in? Like, what's it stopping and who's got the problem with it? I don't think they have a problem with that.
Which one?
The condition
Well,
that it's a temporary parking space to, Bill's point, if they're parking for the winter, that's okay, that's temporary.
We do have total bedrooms. That includes
But
the town.
it's at least preventing someone from taking an unregistered vehicle, parking at their,
well, that's covered in C.
What I'm saying?
Yeah, add another row there, but times 1.
No abandoned, operable, unregistered vehicles permitted within the property.
okay.
I think they
Just
did,
not saying that.
I think they did want people to be able to use them for storage.
Yeah, I think it's more the second part of that. It's, as far as paragraph F goes, I think it's the second sentence that's was important
Last
for
sentence.
Upton Street. All right, E9, is that even legal?
You ask me this every time.
Do I really?
I'm curious, Dan, what's your
And I'll
answer?
tell you the same answer I gave you last time. I don't know. But why not?
Okay, fine.
What's this under?
At least we're consistent.
Legal requirement.
You remember that?
I can tell you if you did this at your own discretion, I would be there to fight it. It's allowing the board to reopen the decision if they wanted to because they found an alleged violation.
Moving right along.
And if it weren't 10 o'clock, I probably want to spend a little more time talking about this, but.
So F3, I think Mike Colleen had requested that the hydrant locations be run by the fire department before they're settled on.
Yes.
I modified the language just a little bit from the last decision, to that effect.
And the 100 feet is what I hear from many fire departments, Dan. From the hydrant to the FDC, the fire department connection.
Yeah, and we,
which they may or may not have with the hydrant layout right now.
no,
Clubhouse is questionable. Clubhouse is the only one that's questionable, in my opinion.
The distance of the hydrant to the clubhouse?
That's correct. The hydrant down by building number 5, straight line as the crow flies, seems to be somewhere up around just over 100 feet. No, even maybe a little over 120 feet. But I think final hydrant locations should be vetted out when construction plans are being looked at.
Oh.
Mr. Hill, the reference in F3 to parking stalls, is that intended
talking about this
to
one.
cover spaces and garage?
we may have to toss one.
The last sentence after the highlight.
They're all looped in anyways, aren't they?
That was meant to be spaces.
So the only issue there is
Yeah,
the
no, I know.
accessible spaces next to an accessible aisle are only 8 feet wide next to an 8-foot aisle.
I didn't know that. So, except for the accessible spaces?
Yeah,
Is the fire department going to issue a closeout letter on this? Or are they working through you, Jeff?
We're
no,
hoping-
no, they work directly with the ZBA.
Oh, okay.
And-
We're
and
expecting to get a
staff.
memo from Mike.
Okay.
Yeah, I've requested it.
All right.
Yeah, so
And
what
I'll
you
give
were
him a
saying,
call
Brian, is the
tomorrow.
Yeah, the handicaps are
8 next to
8 by 18, and then you have it's the handicap, or the van accessible, that has the 8-foot wide stripe. So it's 8 and 8.
So if you got a 20-foot pickup, it's sticking out,
Or you're backing over the sidewalk.
which is blocking the sidewalk.
Yeah, Dan, F3 with respect to the hydrant locations, I don't wanna, I just question whether the hydrant in front of building number 3 and the hydrant near building number 5 really makes sense. Having to cross through potentially parked vehicles to gain access. I leave that entirely to the fire department, but, versus being on an island or somewhere where the fire hydrant can pull right up to it.
Okay.
So, as a point of order here, because this came up recently, I think our rules say we go till 10, or is it 10:30? Does anybody remember?
10.
10, as I remember.
So, if we're gonna continue beyond now, I need a motion to extend our meeting, by whatever amount of time we want, maybe 30 minutes. I mean, how much more time do we need to, think 30 minutes is enough?
Yeah, we're almost done.
Yeah, so, I entertain a motion to extend our meeting, curfew to 10:30.
So moved.
Second.
Just to clarify, so that might get us through Mr. Hill's letter, but that wouldn't get us into waivers tonight.
No.
Yeah, no.
Nope.
All
Yeah,
35
no.
pages of them?
That's another 5-hour meeting.
Okay, so, we don't need to do a roll call vote. We're all here. There's nobody on the,
Correct. There's nobody on Zoom.
I thought you had to do it anyways.
no, everyone's present enough.
Go late.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, so we'll go to 10:30, so let's, stay focused.
Did you vote?
I didn't vote.
It's still passed.
Still passed
You'll
unanimous.
have to watch it on tape.
Is it hot in here or is it just me?
It's hot in here.
It's warm in here.
No, it's warm in
It
here.
is warm in here.
Do you want me to turn the heat down?
Like, is the heat on?
It's on?
It's really warm in here. I agree with that.
That's an option? Oh,
We're freezing all winter.
Well, you've got
Now
two
you're
lawyers on the
complaining.
road, but you need
I was gonna say on Thursday night, but it's not Thursday night tonight.
Yeah, I know, usually it is.
No, that's the temperature in here. It's set at 71.
That's getting ready to start turning the
You
lights
might
on.
as well set it at 40,
Now
it
it's at
still isn't
middle.
gonna do anything.
Yeah, the lights aren't set to a timer, are they?
No.
10 o'clock.
Oh, that would be nice. 10 o'clock, the lights go off.
To have a hearing in the dark.
Everybody's gotta use their phone.
Yeah.
Natick goes to like midnight, 12:30.
All right, so F9, we're gonna wait till we get the input from the fire department on the fire lane.
Okay.
F10 is Upton Street, so probably needs to go away.
Oh, yeah, right.
F10 is going away?
Yeah, that's cut and paste from Upton Street.
Affordability.
The affordability, so G1 needs to get basically take out the 50 and 60% stuff.
That's gone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought so.
Yeah, I think that's just left over from.
Thank you.
That was the engineer, not me.
I took a thermodynamics class.
Mr. Chair, just scroll past G3, there's a reference to a sheet number for the initial assignment of the affordable units. And I don't think we have that yet.
G3?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is from Upton Street, so I don't think we actually have any assignment of units. Does the board care? It's a rental project, so is it?
Right.
They need to provide the state with one, right? For the initial.
Yes, and we need which is addressed in G4, we need the affordability restriction and the lottery plan in place, and, yeah.
But,
I mean, there are a whole bunch of EOHLC prescribed guidelines that are gonna dictate all of this stuff.
But I think unless the units are somehow different, which I don't think they will be, right? They'll rotate.
Not from the exterior, you won't be able to tell the affordable, you can't. You know, you
But
won't
I've
be able to tell the affordable units from the market rate units.
But won't they rotate?
Correct.
So they're not the same units?
Correct.
Okay,
Unlike a for sale development,
right.
there aren't affordable specific units.
I think there's still a requirement for them to be identified for the initial lease up, but.
Yeah, I mean,
But then they
I've
rotate
never
after.
done it as
Right,
a
so
rotation. so.
what we typically do, the process is we have to identify them, we give it to EOLHC.
Yeah.
They usually come back, they make us adjust them, they want to see them evenly dispersed, not only in like better units, the type of units, and then they approve the final plan, and then that's the first units that go into the lottery, and then from there on out, they rotate.
Rotate them. Yeah, that's well.
All right, anything else on G?
So, so you caught the one in G3 where it references the sheet that.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
H is surety, same language as the last project. I changed the section dealing with the driveway pavement so that the final course of pavement has to be completed before the fifth and final multifamily building is completed.
Which one are you in now right now, Dan?
H1B,
H1B.
Oh.
page 23.
So they can do the base and binder throughout, but they have to put the final coat down before the occupancy permit for the final building, which is our practice.
Yep.
About 2/3 of the way through that paragraph, there's a reference to the sixth building, which is carryover.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there a separate certificate of occupancy for each building?
Yes.
So in H1C, should that reference the first certificate of occupancy?
Technically, these are buildings too.
there'd be landscaping as each building is constructed, so I'm not sure.
I thought we dealt with this in a condition already in the decision, didn't we?
But they wouldn't have to post a bond per building or deal with that as each. Wouldn't it be for the whole project if planting, it's the scenario if planting couldn't be done in the first growing season?
There's plantings to complete landscaping, whatever that means. So Dan, I think maybe the takeaway here is this language maybe can be tightened up in H1C.
Yeah, in D9, we actually had a condition that required the landscaping to be done before the issuance of the fifth permit. So we should make that consistent with the
Yeah.
surety provision. And
You just said D9?
D9, yeah, I have it on the screen.
Okay.
So I'll
Okay.
make these two consistent.
Yep.
H1C.
Just speaking of H2, Katrina, has Upton Street done that? Have we entered into, do we have a tri-party or something with Upton Street? And
We have it on both of them.
Okay, right.
Okay, anything else on H? Okay, next section is I for stormwater, water, and wastewater. This is all basically the same language as the past decision. In Upton Street, we had some sewer main extension language in here, so that came out. So this is really just bare bones. The project shall be completed subject to the supervision of the Grafton Water and Sewer Departments for those utilities. Stormwater utilities have to be completed in accordance with the approved plans and stormwater report that Jeff has reviewed and approved. You had a bunch of follow-up requests in your letter to them to provide pipe sizing and calculations and things like that, so that's.
We do have that.
I'm sorry?
We do have all the pipe sizing.
On the plans, but there's no, I haven't seen rational method calcs
Oh.
to support them.
Oh, okay, yep.
There's multiple requests for rational method calcs
yeah,
because of
yeah,
the
yeah.
different sets of regs. And I'd also expect a final stormwater report or set of hydrology to reflect the plans that became forward.
Understood.
It's already been demonstrated that stormwater management has been addressed. And the biggest change is a building's been removed.
Alright, so that's I, and then I guess that's supposed to be J. That's it.
So I think we all need to go through these again anyways. Obviously, the applicant's going to. As far as waivers, we'll talk about those at our next meeting. I will point out, though, the waivers did include waivers to the water district regulations, and I don't believe that that's within our purview.
It is.
Separate water.
No,
We-
our water department is separate. It's not part of the town.
I understand, but it's considered a local board under the regulations.
So we have not in the past touched it, and I anticipate that we won't here either. And then the other thing that we have never done in the past is waived sewer connection fees as well. So just, we can talk about it in more detail when the time comes. But, yeah. At this point, does anyone from the public wish to speak? All right, anyone online, Katrina?
Nobody's, there was one online, hold on. Dan, you wanna stop sharing so I can get?
Yep.
Mr. Chair, just quickly on the fee note, there's also the first, section 1A of the LIP agreement specifically calls out that, the applicant will not request waivers from the town standard fees for issuance of building permits, water connections, and it references septic approvals, but I assume we would probably extend that to the sewer connection fees.
We'll take a look at it, but the rule of thumb is whatever you charge to market rate units, you can charge to us. I mean, market rate, strictly market rate developments,
Right.
as long as we're not singled out.
Oh,
I don't wanna be special.
Katrina, you were looking, or you,
For,
was anybody online?
nobody's online.
Okay, all right.
They were, they left.
All right, so we need to schedule, anything else from anyone before we wrap up for this evening? So then we need to schedule, our next gathering.
Didn't we already pick a date?
So we have on the 23rd, the two variances for Milford Road and 257 Worcester Street. And then Wednesday, the 29th, we have Bowman in the new case, but Peter is not available on the 29th.
Wait, what was that, before the 29th?
The 23rd.
Is there any
And
reason,
Dan is not available the 23rd.
is there any reason why we're not doing a Thursday for the 29th?
Because.
I think the applicant's attorney wasn't available.
Yes, the applicant's attorney was not
Oh.
available. That
I think
was
I wasn't available.
correct.
Somebody wasn't available.
There were a couple of people that weren't available.
Okay.
So with respect to Bowman, is it a problem that Peter, well, it doesn't matter. Peter's not available, so the 29th isn't an option for this case either.
Correct. So we can go into May 7th.
But do we need to
Or-
push off that far? How much time do you want to kind of go through?
My only constraint is I'm on a plane tomorrow overseas, so I'm not back till the 21st.
Okay.
That's 2 weeks from yesterday,
Yes.
and they were looking at the 20,
So the only thing on the 29th is Bowman?
Bowman in the new case. McDonald's at
And what,
92
wait, what's on the
Worcester Street.
23rd?
The 23rd is 7 Milford Road and 257 Worcester Street. Those are new cases. We haven't heard anything. We opened them and continued them because we didn't, because they were variances and we didn't have enough board members.
I thought we did that specifically, planning for Snow Road to be one of those nights.
We did. That Snow Road could be on one night, but we didn't realize Peter was not here on the 28th
Right,
night.
so that's why we, it would have been the 29th.
Have you already missed a meeting?
Yes.
No, I haven't missed
No,
them.
Peter.
Oh, you haven't missed one yet?
Oh,
No.
Do you guys have?
so we could go the 29th.
It was that one I was in North Carolina that.
No, Dan's not available
I
on the
came
23rd.
on
He
the
zoomed in.
Okay, you zoomed in.
You're, or someone else did.
Yeah.
But you were
But you're not available on the
impersonating
29th.
No, he's not available on the 23rd.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Is anybody not available on the
Guys,
29th?
guys.
It wasn't my computer.
Is anybody not available on the 29th? All right, then let's go for the, you guys good with the 29th?
Well, I was gonna suggest giving us enough time and going out to the 7th.
that's a week later.
If
That's better
if
for
that's
me.
better for everybody.
So we can,
If Dan's not available at 7th, how about the 6th?
Oh, you're not the, 6 is fine.
It's fine.
The 6th. I'm fine for the 6th.
I could do
May?
6th of May.
I mean, the 29th is fine as well. I just want to give myself enough time to delve into this decision.
And
And is
I'd
the
like you to do
idea
that.
to get a new draft
What's that?
after this discussion? Are you going to produce a new draft?
Mhm.
Okay. So how long generally do you think?
I would say by Monday.
Okay. So, I mean, I'll be monitoring my email.
So anybody not available on the 6th
Of May,
of May?
I'm fine.
All right, so then so that means we're meeting on the 23rd of April, the 29th of April, and then the 6th of May. So we're getting busy, but sometimes that happens. All right, then,
We're not doing the 28th? Thought we had 2 nights in a row.
Oh my
No.
God.
No, we're not doing the 28th.
I think we thought about the 29th and 30th.
We were
but-
going back
Yeah,
and
it
forth,
might have been
and that's
something
why
like that.
probably I was texting you, asking you when you're available, but it's the 23rd and the 29th.
Okay, so I'd entertain a motion to, continue case number 910 to, May 6th at 7 PM.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. It's your meeting, Brian.
So I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you.